Hello, everybody. Welcome. And we are right there. We are right at the end. It's been a journey. It's been a marathon. It's been a lot of things, but it's almost over. We are less than 2 days away from the 2024 NFL draft. We are about 48 hours away from knowing what the Seahawks do with their number 16 overall pick. And we've done the homework. We've done pretty much all our homework. We got a little bit of last second homework to finish up tonight. I'm Brendan. That is Brandon. And we're going to go over that homework tonight for you. How you doing, Brandon?
I'm doing great, man. It's Christmas is almost here. I'm the kid that's like, in bed. Like, I know I got to sleep because if I don't sleep, Santa's not going to come. But like, is Santa still coming? And what's he going to bring me? So I don't know. I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Obviously, it's not like last year. Last year, we were the trust fund kid on Christmas. We had 4 picks in the top 55. This year, it's not quite like that, but it's still going to be so interesting because it's the first draft with this new coaching staff in place. How are things going to change? How are things going to stay the same? A lot of interesting stuff going on in that regard.
It could go so many different ways, Brendan. This is one of the most unpredictable drafts I think that we've encountered in recent years, outside the one that we had only like 3 picks in where we're like, I don't know what we're going to do in this draft. But this has been definitely one of the ones that you go, boy, they could go in so many different directions. The player model type, the specifications that they used to look for and they would be hard lined into looking for, those opened up a little bit more now. And it's not as much concrete as the type of player and exact, at least specifications that they would have gone for in recent drafts.
Right. So before we get to our draft stuff, and tonight's going to be all about the safety position. There's no real Seahawks news. There is a lot of rumor and innuendo, granted. What are you? I want to ask you though. What are you getting? What kind of a leaning are you getting from the Seahawks, and what direction they may go in this draft?
If I was to put the chances on paper of where they're heading, I think that they have. I think that right now I would say Cooper DeJean would be a guy that I'd give like about a 35%. I think Byron Murphy I would give like 20%. I would probably throw in a couple of other guys that we know of, names we've talked about. Those would be the 2 kind of lead dogs right now as far as in the clubhouse to me, just from the sense of it. Just like not even like something I'm basing it off, just like pure, just taking my finger going and sticking it up in the wind. It just feels like those 2 guys are guys they're kind of circling around just a little bit. Fatano maybe as well because of the whole late hour stuff we're hearing about with maybe there being a knee thing there.
Yeah, I have heard a little bit about that as well, which is also alarming because it seems like we might be getting bit by that right now with a recent Seahawks draft pick, and now to hear about it again from another offensive lineman. But at the same time, if he's there, I don't think you can say no. I think that
I was
it's
just
really
going to
hard
ask
to
you
pass
that.
that up.
I was going to ask you that. Well, because the reports I was hearing about it was rather than being, because there's 2 kinds of knee injuries, right? There's the kind that's like something actively is going on right now that's hurting him. And then there's the kind of, we don't like how thin the film of ligament is on your knee and it's going to eventually give way. I got the impression it was the latter rather than the former, which if I'm like, okay, I get 5 years of Troy Fatano, who's ready to go day one. I mean, it sounds like you're in the same place. Like,
I think so. You have to take risks, and realistically, everything you do is a risk. So thinking that you're going to get through life without ever taking any kind of risk, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, agreed.
Right, but I feel very unsure about things, and it doesn't feel like last year too, because I remember last year, I personally didn't buy it. But there was a lot of Devin Witherspoon buzz with Seattle leading into that draft. I didn't buy it because I thought he was a man corner and we wouldn't want that. But I do remember the Witherspoon stuff picked up crazy amounts of steam in the few days leading up to the draft.
It did. It absolutely did. You had way more of an understanding, even though, like you said, both of us looked at it and we went, well, maybe Gonzalez is more the kind of model fit player to zone that we typically look for if we're going to take a corner this high. But it spoke to how much they loved him, I guess, last year and how much they really bought into, he just had something special to him that teams in the league really loved, us included.
All right. So I think that's about the best we can do because the team is not giving us enough information to say anything further than that. I totally agree with you about Dijon. I think it was Condota recently who had a report that the top 3 guys they were looking at 16 were Dijon, I think it was Murphy, and then it was Penix were the 3 guys that he was really feeling. So we'll see if that ends up meaning anything when our pick comes up. I still think a trade down is fairly likely depending on what's actually there when we pick. So
that's where the Cooper DeJean thing probably can still happen, right? You could move to 22, 23 and probably still get Cooper DeJean, but you're probably not getting Byron Murphy if you pull back that far.
Yeah. And as someone who doesn't really get the Byron Murphy stuff all that well, I wouldn't mind. I got no problem with that.
Yeah. I'm in about the same camp with you on that, where I'm going,
It's not even a need anymore.
It's kind of meh. It's fine. It's fine. I'll say that. It's fine.
All right. So safety. Let's open up the book on safety. It's not a great safety class, first of all. It's I've seen better.
Yeah. It's absolutely, yes. I've definitely had better.
Yeah. Would you agree that there will not be a safety taken in the first round of the draft this year? Do you think that's likely?
As long as the team doesn't look at Cooper DeJean as a safety.
Right. So if you're looking at Cooper DeJean as like a defensive back, Kyle Hamilton style, and you're just saying, oh, he's separate from that, you don't think any of these pure safeties are going to go in the first. Would you agree?
No chance.
All right. That doesn't mean they're all bad. That doesn't mean there isn't somebody here who's going to be good. So let's go ahead and start with, I guess, the second round because there is no first.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
It is some of that positional stuff still factors into this for why that drops too. I'll give you, they're not the most talented group, but it's also a bit of the positional value thing that factors in here, where safeties, as we've seen just this offseason with how many safeties were getting clipped as far as who are just getting paid out there. It's just one position that's going in that it's moving more in that direction than it's going in the other direction of being higher valued.
At the same time, if somebody like Kyle Hamilton was in this draft, I'm sure he'd go in the first.
I agree. Yeah, he absolutely would.
If you had Sean Taylor in this draft, he would go in the first, or somebody like that.
I would think so. Yeah, definitely not a guy that's close to those guys necessarily. I would say that there's guys that can get into the ballpark, especially the first guy you mentioned. I mean, the other guy was a complete freak show, but there's guys in this draft with Hamilton that are they're dancing around in that area to a degree.
All right. So my top safety in this draft, this is going to be an interesting one because there's a lot to unpack here. And we're going to have to spend some time to figure out how we feel about this one, I think, because things got more complicated after his pro day. Talking about Tyler Nubin of the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So everything looked great for this guy. And then he tested at his pro day. And it was some of the worst testing I've ever seen from a high-profile player. The measurements are fine. He's 6'1", 199 pounds, 32-inch arms. That's all okay. But 4.7, 440, which is one of the slowest ever by a safety. 31.5-inch vertical, which is miserable for a safety. 10-foot broad, that's okay. That's workable. And then a 4.5, 120-yard split, which is, I think, the slowest 20-yard shuttle for a safety that has ever been recorded. And these are pro day numbers. These are not even combine numbers. These are supposed to be the ones that are fudged in your favor. And now we have to weigh this against what we saw on tape on the field, where Nubin looked great, where I thought Nubin was a first-round caliber safety based on what I saw on the field. So where do you land with Tyler Nubin right now?
I think evaluation is one where tape always ends up outweighing testing to me. And testing is used for augmentation. Testing is used to answer questions that come from the tape. Is this guy fast enough? Because on tape, he looks slow. This guy, can he change direction? Because I don't think he changed direction. What's his 3-cone time? When I watch Tyler Nubin, as you said, I see a late first-round safety prospect in his ability. There is nothing he can't do on the field. He plays aggressively while still playing under control. He can hit and he can make a play on the ball. You can line him up in man coverage. You can line up in zone coverage. You can use him in any way you want in this modern split shell, cover two shell thing. I think a lot of the safeties in this draft are coming from that background now, but this guy certainly has it as well, as he's played free. He's played strong. He's played some slot down in there. He can tackle. He was targeted 20 times this year and he gave up 6 catches. I've been charting all of these guys in the draft from cornerbacks to safeties, Brendan. I even found one guy who has come close to doing that well on his targets to receptions, to how small the amount of receptions, how little he is allows receptions when he's targeted. So we come back to my initial point on this. What matters more? What is the point are we doing here? Are we trying to find football players? Or are we trying to find Olympic time testing trial players? Is there guys that maybe just don't test well when it goes outside of what they normally do? Could that be maybe that? But do I have certain guys? And in his case, Brendan, my point on this is that he was a guy that didn't have a ton of questions coming out of his tape of what I saw. He wasn't a guy that was looking at going, I don't know about this. I don't know about this. Instead, I saw a guy that was really talented that didn't have any real major flaws in his game. Was he, was he Earl Thomas back there with a center field and he's back there, end to end covering everything? No, but to fit into the split shell designs and be able to play both of those two roles, to be a fine tackler, to make plays on the ball and to be a hitter and to have great instincts and coverage on top of it, that weighs out in my mind. And still enough to keep him up into the second round range is where I would put him. So if there's a little bit of a ding, maybe that comes in there where I take him out of the first round into that second, where at the testing times you go, okay, maybe that does tamp down his top end ceiling. But I still just feel like he's just a good football player, and that's going to end up carrying out.
Yeah, that's where I landed. I put him down into my early second round. I still really like him. Great ball skills, some of the best ball skills you'll find in this draft class. 9 picks over the last 2 years, which is very impressive for college football, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Fundamentally sound tackler, rangy, reads routes well. He's agile enough to hang with receivers in man. He can play back. He can play in the box. He's got great instincts. I got to believe that McDonald's defense would benefit tremendously from having a guy like him. He's a great fit for this cover 2 shell Fangio defense stuff that we're seeing now.
Pure fit, right?
Pretty much. Biggest issue that I had with him on tape was his acceleration seems a little slow getting up to top speed. Could also be a little more decisive when he converts into a linebacker, but that's something that will probably be coached. Just a little bit of hesitance. I still consider him to be the clear best safety in this class. I think that you are going to have to take some things on faith because his testing numbers were that bad. But I'm willing to do it. Some people are just football players. They're not track stars. They're not sprinters. They're not long jumpers. They're just football players. And I think this guy is a football player. So, yeah, early second for me.
Top rated safety by PFF last year when you remove the snap counts as well. So it's like beyond just the eye test, the numbers show on that side of it that he's so assignment correct. He's doing the right thing, playing and play out, and he's doing it well. And like you said, to a better degree than any other safety in this draft. And there are times where I will lean on the testing numbers and go, ooh, that was tough. But it's always then coming and branching out of the tape. And you're going, boy, I don't know about his quickness. He looks a little labored getting off the line of scrimmage. Oh, let me look at my 10-yard split here. 1.75. Oh, confirmed. That's to me, and maybe I'm wrong in my way of looking at it. Do you see it the same way in your connection where you're trying to connect with that to the other? You don't want to inverse it to me. You don't want to go, here's a 4.65 guy. Let me try to reverse engineer that to the tape now and see where I can try to find that and seek it out on the tape. It should be something you're seeing from the tape right out the gate. It should become readily apparent if he is that slow or unathletic.
I mean, you would think that if it was a problem, it would show up on tape, right? I agree. I think that it would make very little sense for you to take a look at a situation like that and go, well, he looks good on a football field, unless he's playing at a small school, right? If he's playing at a really small school, then maybe you can go, well, he looks fast because everybody else is really slow. That's one thing.
That's true. But we do have a track record, and I know Minnesota's not the biggest program, but I mean, they've even churned out Antoine Winfield Jr., who's been a great safety in the league. So it's like, it's not like they haven't gotten some safeties. They've turned out the program been really good, or they're well-trained or well-taught to play at a pro level.
They play like Ohio State every year, don't they? They play
they got some legitimate, they got some legitimate guys they got to go through. It's not murderers row, but it's not easy. It ain't power. It ain't UTEP.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I'm pretty on board with him. I don't know if there's any route to getting him. Maybe if you took that Commanders trade where you traded back to the 2 second-round picks, or what is that? It's like they have the first pick in the second
36-40. Wasn't that what that
Something
was?
like that. That might line up pretty decently. That might work.
You could do that. I think it's hard in the second round for where he's going, like you said, because there'll be much more of, I think, a pull potentially for either an interior lineman or like a Junior Colson, Edrin Cooper type. I think that's what's really made, not that they don't like the Tyler, but that there's that other player, another position that they just have a little more heavily weighed.
Right. All right. So Tyler Nubin, we both still like him, second rounder. Staying in the second round, I have here another guy who did not fare very well in the testing during this pre-draft process, Cameron Kinchens of Miami, the Miami Hurricane. 5'11", 203 pounds, so pretty good size. He's only 21, which is a big deal. These guys that are 21, they have room to grow. 31 and a quarter inch arms, which is okay. But he ran a slow 40, 4.65. 10-yard split was a little below average as well. Vert was a little below average, and his broad jump is historically bad for his safety. So once again, we're stuck here weighing his lackluster testing against his play on the field, which includes 11 interceptions over the last 2 seasons for that Miami defense. So where do we stand on Cameron Kinchens?
A fast safety on the field. So I think he plays faster than his tested 40-time Brendan. A little bit like Nubin on that. Ball skills, body control, catch radius. He does excel at his best in being in coverage, but he is a guy to me that is a complete football player. You mentioned the interceptions that he's had back-to-back years of production, which is unusual for safeties in college football. So him doing that shows off a little bit of his ball skills, his ability to go make a play on the ball. It isn't just cheap interceptions he's getting to get up to 11. It's him generating and manufacturing that, jumping things, seeing things clearly, reading the quarterback's eyes, for instance. He reminds me, and look, this is always the place I've talked about this. I hate when I do this, where you feel lazy on a comparison you make of a college player who had a former college player great that had played there, but he just reminds me so much of Ed Reed and the way he moves, the smoothness of his athleticism moving in space. And while it may look like on the surface of it a crazy comp, they both had similar production in their final 2 years of college. Ed Reed ran a 4.57 versus the 4.65 that we have Cameron Kinchens running, but they both had the exact same 10-yard split, dead even. So some about playing safety is anticipation, awareness, and instincts, which is Ed Reed had down to his core, and certainly just a titch faster. I'm not saying Cameron Kinchens has Ed Reed's upside. If he did, I'd be putting him in the first round. But do I think he's a football player? Do I think he's as tough as a coffin nail? Do I think he'll take your head off on top of having those ball skills? Yes, I do. And for that type of safety, I'd put him in the second round and be very excited if he was on my team. I am a little worried about the 82% completion rate targeting him this year versus the 50% last year, where the coverage, the interceptions were there, but the coverage did dip down, and a little bit of what's the reason, but he did deal with, I think, a little bit of injuries this year that I think may have played a part in that.
Right. So I'm pretty on board with Kinchens in the second round as well. I do put him in the late second. He has a lot of issues that I think will be ironed out in a couple years because he is just 21 years old. He has a lot of busts on his tape, right? He has a lot of where he just completely blows the coverage, or he completely blows the opportunity to come up and run support. I feel like there's a lot of big mistakes, but that should get cleaned up. That should be improved on in the coming couple of years. He doesn't take great angles, I feel like, against the run. I think there was that game against, I think it was against Drake May, where he just got lit up in particular. But these things should get better. I don't think he's a great tackler. I do wonder about that a little bit. I do wonder if that will improve enough. But overall, you're talking about a guy who's got great coverage instincts, elite ball skills. He's a hard hitter, I'll say that much for him. He's ready and willing to get his hands dirty near the line of scrimmage, keeps up in man coverage. So, yeah, I ended up landing late second round. And I do wonder if maybe I should bump that up to the mid-second round when I consider the fact that he is 21 years old, but I ended up landing late second personally.
Well, to your point on those items you mentioned about the detriments, I think that it's completely fair. What I'd say with it is and you'd probably agree on this, that those detriments also come out of a place of him going 100 miles an hour and giving you max effort, and you're feeling him play with passion and a force on the football field. And so he's making a mistake, but he's doing it going 100 miles an hour versus the guy that a lot of us, we've watched on tape. We got done with the cornerbacks, Brendan, and at least half your list, you had guys like this where there was no interest whatsoever as far as any of the physicality of the game goes. And that's the part you talk about, the cleaning up, and that's there to be had with Cameron, that I believe in as well, because I can always have him dial it back, get him a little bit more under control and that type of stuff. It's hard to get the guy to crank it up, let's get the intensity up here. Come on, and he's bringing that. That's for sure.
Right. So would you put Kinchin's second or third on your safety list this year in the draft, you think?
He's my top essentially free safety. I think it's ubiquitous on this because all the safeties in the draft, me and Brendan didn't say this is the top for you folks, but all these safeties, if you look at their snap counts, it's very flipped and mixed, and it's 200 to the free, 200 to the strong, 100 to the slot. But he's my number 2 safety in this draft behind Nubin. I have them both about a mid-second round grade in my outlook of them. But they're both 1-2, and I like them both as players. I love safeties that are complete safeties that can also take away the football. That's going to be something that I hold in high value.
Yeah, I do have one safety ahead of Kinchin's as well as Nubin, and we'll get to him in 1 second here. But both roughly on the same page here, I would say. We both like him, both appreciate him. Mm-hmm. He didn't have a great Senior Bowl, I will say that. He went to the Senior Bowl, and I thought he got beat up a little bit by a couple of those receivers. But that's part of the puzzle.
He had that injury where it's like it was a bad injury, I think, midway through the year. So I'd wonder how completely healed he's gotten off the back of that. It was pretty deep into the year. I think he had it, if I'm not mistaken.
All right. So next safety on the list here. This is another second rounder for me. Javon Bullard of the Georgia Bulldogs, another 21-year-old, a little bit smaller, 5'10.5", 198 pounds, only 30 3/4 arms, which starting to push it a little bit. Although for safeties, it's not the end of the world. It's still not great. You don't love it.
Especially because he does so much in the slot.
Mm-hmm. Ran a 4.47 with a 1.5, 110-yard split, so good 40-yard dash. Numbers over the last couple of years, I don't think he was a full-time starter for Georgia, but he played a decent amount. 4 interceptions, 102 tackles, 8 passes defensed. What do you make of Javon Bullard when he makes the NFL transition?
He's a fun player. I can understand why you'd have him as your guy higher than Kitchens. Certainly the testing numbers at 4.47, 151, 10-yard split are legitimate. And part of the reason that he was able to be comfortably put by Georgia, not this past year, but the year before, with the majority of his snaps out of the slot and performed well with the snot. I mean, I don't think we could have taken either of these 2 other safeties we just talked about, being Nubin or Kitchens, and asked them to do the same as he was asked to do in the prior year. It did seem like it did help him moving more to those free safety snaps. The majority of his snaps went and were kind of pulled from the slot and went more to the free safety position this past year with Georgia. And he went from giving up over 300 yards in coverage down to only giving up 119 yards in coverage. Now, you're in the slot, you're going to naturally give up more there anyway, but it did seem like it was a better fit for him to move off the slot. So not a guy to me, Brendan, that you would have down the slot full time. You would mix him in there a little bit. And part of the reason that I put my comp on him and that I did, strong pre-snap recognition, solid awareness post-snap. So this is a really heady player. It seems like those Georgia players always are pretty smart. They're really well coached down there. I think coming downhill is where he's best, which is odd because he's got more free safety snaps. So he's kind of that weird guy that you want him kind of coming down and being aggressive, yet free safety tends to be more of those guys, back with some depth. I don't think he'll be as good as kind of a center fielder free safety, and you're asking me to do that, but I think he can handle the cover 2 stuff well. So I don't think he's like super rangy, little tight hipped. He's not going to be able to flip and roll like that. That's where, again, I don't think him in the slot is a good fit. He's more of, to me, the safety guy. But my comp for him, Brendan, and some Brian Branch vibes here too, but my comp for him was CJ Gardner-Johnson.
Okay, I can dig it. Smart player on the field is what I had. Smart and savvy. Also pretty good at shedding blockers, which you don't find a lot among the guys that are sub 200 pounds. That was one thing that kind of stood out to me. He reads routes well. He tracks routes well. He's a sound tackler. Really good speed in a straight line, and he can do man coverage stuff. So a lot to like. I did mention that he's not as rangy as you would like, but as long as you don't ask him to do single high stuff, I think it'll be okay. Tight hips. I also had that as well. I do wonder if the smaller size thing might be a bit of an issue because he is 5'10.5", so that's even shorter than Kinchin's, but I think it'll be okay. And the fact that he's only 21 also raises the opportunity of him being able to improve in some of these areas. So I'd say a second round gamble that I'm willing to take. I know it's a gamble, but in this defense, I think he would fit mostly really well, and second round is fine by me.
Yeah, he's a real rugged defender, which I think is going to help him overcome some of that size stuff too. Another one of these guys willing to get in there and stick his nose in, and it's not going to be a problem. So he was well graded last year by PFF too. They really liked his game. He's fun on tape. I think he's a pretty solid piece you have. I don't think he's got a lot of high upside to him, but he can work in a couple of different roles. And that straight line speed really helps him, like you said, the explosiveness on driving on routes. I'm having off coverage. Somebody tries to cut an in route, he's really good on that straight line of cutting forward. It's just when he has to flip those hips and change direction that you're like, oh, okay, a little restricted here.
All right, that was actually all I had in my second round. Did you have anybody on your end?
I did sneak in Kalen Bullock into my into the back end of my second round as well.
Okay.
Just a thin ball hawking free safety that can bring the boom. So I thought he brought the ability to hit. 2022, there was times, in my opinion, watching the tape, and this is the guy we watched going back to last year. So I've got a lot of notes on him from 22. It was like he was a center fielder in outfield covering 3 outfield positions in 2022 with some of the space he was covering. And the testing numbers do indicate a little bit of this with the 4.48, the 1.51 10-yard split, which is, phenomenal. He did it 188 pounds. So it wasn't like he's just 170 putting those numbers up, Brendan. He was at legit size 6'2". So I think he's about as rangy as you're going to find in this draft from the free safety position, in my opinion, and maybe one of the more rangy free safeties we've seen coming out of the draft over the past couple of years, in my opinion. I feel like his arms are even longer than they were tested or how they play on the football field. His arms play like they're 34-inch long arms. He squeezes down zones. His speed gets him to places, and he dissuades a lot of throws naturally just by his length and by his ability to get from point A to point B and get there really fast. He's also just seems like he's just like blotting out the sun when he's draping guys in coverage, making it really hard to catch him even when you might be there kind of available to make the catch and you get this big paw going in front of your eye or whatever, and you just can't make the grab. He's used in a variety of different roles. The place where it's brutal, and there's no two ways about this with this guy, is that he sucks and run. The tackling, the willingness is there, but just the pursuit angles, wrapping up, tries to use his shoulder too much. There's just a lot of things to have to clean up as far as a run defender goes. Now, I will say it feels like he's willing. That's the part of what kept me from him to me in the back of the second round, is I didn't feel like it was a matter of he's not willing. He's got to get a little bit stronger. He's got a little bit more, out probably another 5-10 pounds on that build. And I think it'll be a little bit less of the shoulder tackling too. And I think it'll get a little bit better because he certainly at 6'2" has the size at least to do it. He's got the length to do it. It's not that he's got 30-inch arms. He should be a good tackler. But I liked what he brought in coverage as much as anything, Brendan. And I'll acknowledge the run defense problems are there, but I did like what he brought in coverage a lot.
Right. Yeah. When you're evaluating these players, there's the objective measure, and then there's the how would they fit with the Seahawks measure. I think that Kalen Bullock is a good player. I don't think he would fit very well with what Seattle's trying to do, because they want safeties that can do both things. They want safeties that can tackle. They want defensive backs just in general that can tackle. So I do wonder, there are probably teams out there that value Bullock significantly more than Seattle's going to, because they don't like if Pete Carroll was still here, I imagine he would look at Kalen Bullock and go, that could be my heir apparent to Quandre Diggs, because Definitely. Quandre Diggs was not a good tackler either. A lot of people made a big deal about how bad a tackler he was last year or the year before. He was never a good tackler, really. So you could look at Bullock and say he could do some of that stuff.
Yeah, I certainly think a single high roll, doing a heavy amount of snaps, cover 3, cover 6, that kind of defense would probably best suit him. And some of it just depend on whether or not you feel like that run defense can come along, or if it's stuck where it's at. I think part of the thing with Diggs, or part of the things with even a guy like Earl Thomas who have a share of misses, is that like when you're 5'9", 185, 109 pounds, it's like there's only so much you can do with those short arms. It's like there's only so much you're going to do. You're going to miss certain tackles. There's going to be times guys are going to slide off you, but when you at least have the necessary size and length and can add maybe another 5 or 10 pounds, maybe there's a little more hope for that to come. And that's in my evaluation, that there's a little more hope for that to come forward, albeit it'll take a little bit of time.
Okay. So yeah, I put Kalen in my third round, and I don't know if he'd be worth a third round to us, but I do think, objectively speaking, he's about a third rounder, and you had him at the very back end of your second. So we're very close to each other on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And was that it for your second round?
That's all for my second rounders.
All right. Well, that lets us go to the third round, and I only had one guy in the third round other than Kalen Bullock at
No
this
goodness.
position.
Okay.
So things got thin pretty quickly for me here. I did end up, and we're going to definitely have a little bit of a discussion on this one. I did end up with Cole Bishop in my third round.
Oh my God. Okay.
So another Utah safety here. We've not had good luck with these Utah defenders as of late. I mean, Devin Lloyd's pretty good if you want to look NFL wide, but generally speaking, seems like there's not a lot of luck here. Um, Everything about his physical profile is pretty great, except for his arms. He has sub 30-inch arms, 29 and 3/4, but he's big. He's got weight to him. He ran a 4.45 40 with a 1.52 10-yard split. Production over the last 2 years has been pretty good. He's not the ball hawk that the previous guys were. He's got 3 interceptions combined over the last 2 years. Makes a lot of plays in the backfield, though. So, what's your read on Cole Bishop?
There's some stuff to like with them. It wasn't an easy evaluation. Some guys are straightforward. This one wasn't. And there are, to your point, a lot of people that love Cole Bishop in NFL circles, reportedly. He's a 3-year starter. He's more of a box safety than anything else. Yes, he had some free safety position reps out there, but he's not good in those reps, in my opinion. He's at his best down round near the line of scrimmage where he can use his sharp read and react skills and strong burst to get to the play. Like you said, he's a capable hitter. He's got an itchiness to light you up. He's not shy about that. Strong blitzer, both in his understanding of timing and how to disengage off running backs when they're trying to come up and fill the hole. And when he's coming up, 36 blitzes, he had 6 hurries, 3 sacks, and 3 quarterback hits. Really good. Just turned 21 years old also, Brennan. Really good. Upside and room to grow. Let's get to the bad. 520th ranked safety in Pro Football Focus out of 800 graded safeties. So what's going on? Because when I watch the tape, his grade fits to what I see on the tape. Where he gets lost in coverage, he gets over aggressive. He's completely lost when he's in single high situations. When he's near the box, he can take away tight ends and running backs. You ask him to take away anything else, I don't think that's happening. Look, the guy's a real leader on the defense as far as communicating, and every snap you're watching him pointing this way and that way and this way, and he's showing everybody where they need to be, and that's great with him. But I see too many missed tackles. I see a very limited role of where he can play at the NFL level. I don't think he's a fit in the split safety stuff because I don't think he can do the free safety stuff. I think he's going to be uncomfortable when you put him in that role. But he is 21. He's not a final product. I'll give him that. And there are some good parts to his game. It's not all utterly bad for me, but just the bad was enough for me to go, I need a little more flash from you, especially when, like you said, you're not bringing really the ball skills. You're not really giving me that guy in coverage that's going to be just out there all over guys. I got to kind of fit you more to the traditional box safety role, in my opinion, with this guy.
Yeah, I'm generally inclined to agree with that, but I do think that there is enough here to where I'm willing to put him in the third round, even though I don't think the Seahawks would value him that way because of all the things you said. He's very aggressive, and I think that's going to be a problem when he's trying to play free safety stuff. One thing I wrote, he gets tunnel vision when chasing down the ball carrier. Like, he doesn't see the whole play. He just kind of sees, okay, I'm here. The ball carrier's there. I got to get there. Gets beat over the top because of his eagerness to bite down. Short arms cause missed tackles. But I think he's a really good athlete. He hits hard. He's good at navigating through traffic. He's got a high motor, maximum effort at all times. So I ended up saying third round was about where I would value him, objectively speaking.
And I put a fourth on him, so I still didn't ding him completely out of the draft or anything like that. I do know in the NFL circles he's being talked about as a top 60 guy potentially, and I think that's where I'm bristling on that a little bit of like going, okay, look, I get the 21-year-old thing, but the tape's got to show it too. And it's not that the tape's bad, and I would even argue maybe there's not any one real huge horrible area to his game that is just they're minor bad problems, but there's a variety of minor bad problems across the tape that are no guarantees for being cleaned up. Especially when you got that, the part that really just got stuck with me is though we played that free safety stuff, he didn't play it well. And that's the part that gets me nervous about, because it seems like with what we're seeing in these guys in college, Brendan, that this is going to become more of a prerequisite that you have to have the both covers. It's less about, well, do you run the scheme, and more about now it's an NFL standard that free safeties do strong safety stuff and strong safeties do free safety stuff. And it has to be that way. And it's become, the positions are just becoming, the same.
Yeah. All right. Real quick here, we did get a dono a little bit ago from Chase Stern. Thank you for the $5.
Go
It was
Chase.
actually,
Love that. Look at Chase's deal there. That's awesome,
yeah,
Chase.
yeah, that's great. It was actually Verse in the report, not Murphy. Okay. So he's talking about the Condota report where the three guys the Seahawks seemed really interested in were Verse, Penix, and Cooper DeJean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's interesting. I find that interesting because, I mean, I think Verse is a mid first round guy all day. It's a little bit interesting to me that we think he would fit the McDonald defense. I guess he is bigger than the average edge, and maybe that's something he values.
He plays tough too. He's not a pure power edge like Darius Robinson and how he's built, but he
Mm-hmm.
plays with power elements that, and the Bob Condota thing, they try to, when you tracked it to the Albert Breer article, they were trying to, it wasn't Condota making this comp, but somebody was trying to make the comp of Verse to they're like, well, it's like the Ravens having, who's that edge that they had for many years?
Suggs.
Suggs. I was like, I don't see that comp. I don't know if you did, but I was like, that's not Verse. That's not Versus comp. But what we have, I had Brian Burns, I think, is the guy that I had my comp for him, and we were doing our draft guide, and I still fall back on that. And if you get yourself Brian Burns in the 16th pick, I mean, are you or I crying about that? I'm not. I'm fine with that. I trust that evaluation. So you're right. I don't think he purely fits that power edge stuff that they look at for, but maybe just does it enough. And he's such a good player, and he does give you, I think, Brendan, a pretty solid floor, right? Like you may not have the huge ceiling with him, but he does give you a strong floor.
Yeah. I'm not really concerned about Jared Verse being a bust. Like, I think there's a very low chance of that. I would say that he is one of the safer things you could do at 16. I would have no objection with it. I do find it a little bit suspicious that he went back for another year of college and didn't really get better, but Will Anderson didn't get better when he went back for one more year, right? So
and remember what happened with Will is you could chart it back to the issue was the double team rates went through the roof in the final season.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's pass rushers are always going to be less productive when they're dealing with more double teams. Even the great ones are not going to be as good when they have to deal with two guys versus dealing with one. They can still be productive, but everyone's going to get a bit of a dip.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Chase Stern.
Thanks, Chase.
Yeah.
Love the emoji there.
Yeah. And I got to be honest, after those 5 safeties, there was a pretty significant drop off to me. So if you got anybody else you'd like to put in the third round, let me know. Well, who you got?
I have a couple of third round guys left, 3 of them actually. First one's going to be Taylor-Demerson out of Texas Tech.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 3-year starter, 10 interceptions over the past 3 years. He's an exciting free safety with ball skills and also a complete player. He flashes speed and burst to the ball carrier. He's willing to run the alleyway from center field, and when he arrives, he's capable of bringing a bigger hit than you'd think for a guy his size. He plays bigger than the 5'10", 197, in my opinion. Instinctually in coverage, he has ball skills, but just also an innate understanding of where he needs to be positioned in coverage as that single high safety. He understands how to take away the post routes, take away those reads the quarterback thinks he's got, that he's drooling because he's like, oh, I've got the 9 route here over the top, everything's set up, and he will roll to take that route away and cause that quarterback's eyes to move off the spot more often than not. Pre-snap reads accurately capture post-snap play, just generally moving in the right direction, the right flow of the play. He's attuned to the flow of the play as well, reacting quickly as it unfolds. So from pre to post-snap to through the later portions of the play, he was solid throughout, in my opinion, which was rare versus some of the other safeties in this draft that I watched, Brennan, where there could be spots where it's like, okay, he's great as long as he doesn't have to read prior to the snap and he's just in the moment reacting. But this guy does kind of all of that. So I liked what he brought. Certainly got to acknowledge the 5'10", 197, about 31-inch arms. But 4'4", 152, 38-inch vert. All the testing numbers were very nice. So a little undersized, but he plays bigger than his size, in my opinion. And he offers all the versatility, I think, in the world that you could want for even the Seattle Seahawks type of defense. I don't think he's just a pure free safety.
Yeah, I ended up putting DTD in my 4th, I believe. This is not, it's the other Texas Tech safety that doesn't believe in outer space, by the way. This is not that one, just to be clear.
Okay. Because I'd knock him around on that one there if we can.
Yeah. But yeah, incredibly good testing numbers overall. He is a little bit small and he has shorter arms, but he's got great coverage instincts, is what I wrote. Attacks the ball in the air, good overall tackling technique, true processor at the safety position, has a quick trigger. I do think that eye candy can fool him and he'll bite down hard on fakes and stuff. I don't think he hits with as much force as you would like to see. He doesn't, you have these tacklers who when they hit a guy, the guy just goes down. And then you have guys where they hit the ball carrier and the ball carrier always gets a couple extra yards because he wasn't hit that hard. So he can just kind of fall forward or push forward. Gets caught with eyes in the backfield. So I ended up putting him in the 4th. I do like him. I don't think he'll be great in the box because he is a little bit smaller, but he's not a bad tackler, so it could work. It would be okay. So I liked him. I didn't quite like him as much as you did, but he's good.
Yeah, I get it. I understand totally. And I think the tackling is definitely a little bit the one thing I knocked him on was just where there's, his arms are a little short. Sometimes wrapping up fully isn't going to be the best with him, but I think it was a huge detriment to his game.
Real quick here, Zorn76, thank you for the $20. Happy pre-draft, everyone. I'm big on Latu or Verse, but also a cornerback at 16 if one falls to pair with Witherspoon. Well, I was kind of trying to step back and take scope of the first round right now as it pertains to the entire NFL. It would not surprise me if we have every corner in this draft available to us when we pick at 16, because I was just looking at it. I was like, okay, we're going to have 6 quarterbacks in the first 15. We're going to have 4 wide receivers. We're going to have Bowers, who's a tight end. And then you're going to have Alt. And then you're going to have a couple other offensive linemen. And it's like, there's no more room for a corner. So I actually think you might see all the corners be right there.
Yeah, I've run a variety of 30 first-round mocks trying to kind of figure out where everything's going and looking at whether teams are going. I don't have any team that we've heard of in that top 16, to your point, that's clawing for a cornerback. And last year, what happened with the receiving? We had no receivers taken in the top 20 picks. We had the opportunity to take the best wide receiver in the draft at number 20. So could history repeat itself, Zorn, and again this year? And for the cornerback position where you're at 16 and you're able to take the best cornerback in this draft, very well could be the case. And one reason Cooper DeJean, I think, is being so heavily flirted with. I think if Cooper comes here, he'll probably play both between corner and safety eventually, where he'll probably, have variety of snaps in different places. But the point being is that that's what could drive them to go to corners. When we're talking about what drives value on the board, who's the best player you have on your board? Well, pretty understandable that first looking at edge or looking at guard or looking at linebacker, you're looking at your board and saying, hey, right now, Cooper DeJean's the highest guy we have grade on our board here in this moment of where we're picking versus these other positions, because we think so highly of him, especially for his fit into this defense. And it could be the way with the other guys too. I mean, Quinyon Mitchell with the way he takes away the ball, Terry Arnold for the way he tackles and takes away the ball. There's definitely a way that this could go to where Seattle falls in love with those guys, and the value is just too good to turn down.
Yeah, and I think Latu and Verse will both be there as well, for whatever that's worth.
I do too as well here, Zorn. I think Turner's the guy that goes off the board to Atlanta, but then you're looking at Latu, Verse sitting there, DeJean sitting there, Byron Murphy sitting there. Those are the kind of options I think that we're looking at our Hawks having in front of them at that pick.
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell
may be there. Mitchell will be there. Yep. Yeah. I think he's probably going to be there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you, Zorn.
Thank you, Zorn. Appreciate you, man. Happy pre-draft.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right. You said you had a couple other third rounders?
Yes. So my other third rounder here would be a guy that's climbed up late into the third round for me. I went back and watched a little bit more tape a couple days ago on him and solidified it for me. And that's going to be Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. 6'2", 211, 31.5-inch arms, slightly short, but not bad short. I just would call him a good football player, Brendan. Play smart, fast, hard. He's a real factor as a run defender. He also brings enough in coverage. He is probably more of a box safety, but he does fit, I think, to this new split safety shell type of guy that's, you got to look for. He's no like Jamal Adams kind of guy where it's got to just be in the box. I think he also had his highest graded games last season when he's playing free safety. So it does have the majority of the snaps at free safety. So it does show that positional flexibility between those two spots, I think. Good speed for the position, more of a straight line guy. Change of direction, flipping his hips aren't the equivalent to his speed, which was tested well at 4.48 at 6'2", 211. That's good for his size, that speed. That's really nice, especially the 37.5-inch vert. I thought he tested pretty well overall. Still getting from point A to point B, he gets there in a hurry. He arrives with some bad intentions. He'll lay a hit on you. He'll come up and tackle. In fact, probably being a little bit like Cameron Kitchens, where just a little bit too much gusto in the tackling rather than coming down under control and just wrapping up under control. Maybe needs to learn a little bit like that, because when he's coming downhill, Brendan, it's like the brakes have gone out. The brakes on the bus have gone out, and he better hits the guy or he's going past him. But just liked him as far as a unique guy that could, be used in every different area you'd want to use, from free safety to strong safety. He's willing in both areas. He's not great in either area, but he's really strong in both, enough so to take that guy into kind of the late third round territory where I'd have him if the Hawks were picking there, I'd understand it as a pick because I think he would be a pure fit and eventually find a role into being at least a league average starter in this defense, if not a little bit above. So.
Yeah, I went back and forth pretty heavily on Jaden Hicks, whether or not he should be a late third or an early fourth for me. I ended up putting him in the early fourth. So really close to where you are, I think. The thing that kind of lost me a little bit was the short area quickness and change of direction skills, which causes him to miss tackles because he can't, open field stuff. He can't keep up with these more nimble and athletic ball carriers, I feel like. And I also felt like he was overly aggressive on misdirection and eye candy. So I'm not convinced that he's flexible enough to do what Mike McDonald needs in his defense. There is stuff to like. I like his closing speed. I like his size. I like the fact that even though he's a bigger safety, he holds it pretty well deep. But there's just some stuff going on there athletically that I don't feel like can be fixed because he's only 22, but I don't know if you can suddenly improve your change of direction skills or your short area quickness. So I did push him down just a little bit, but we're close to each other.
Yeah, the problems I did see on tape with him with the hips is it wasn't much even in coverage. It was, to your point, on the run game. He comes down the run game. He's picked an angle. The back's taking an angle. Okay, the back bounces the run outside. He has to flip his hips and get back to the sideline to get back to the back, and he can't do it. The back gets an angle on him around the corner. That did pop up at times. And to your point, that's maybe not something that, super improves under just, I feel like you can teach him a little bit more better to come under control rather than come always 100 miles an hour. Maybe go like 85 miles an hour and have a little more control as you're coming down to be able to adjust to that type of stuff. But it's a concern.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was my very early fourth round safety here. Like him, would definitely be interested. I'm just not completely convinced about the all around game.
Mm-hmm.
So
I went back and forth with them too. So it wasn't an easy battle in that one. Like Cole Bishop, this was one that was kind of tough for me.
All right. You had one more third rounder, you said?
Two more actually.
Okay. Nice.
I've got next one is Katan Olawodipo out of Oregon State.
All right.
So 6'1", 216, 32 3/8 inch arms. He's got the size, he's got the weight, he's got the length, something that's been missing a little bit from some of these guys we've looked at here initially. 4.58, 159. That's not a blazing fast 40. Obviously, the 159 is a little bit better where it helps you out there. Certainly didn't do anything great with the testing numbers, but another guy that's a little bit like Nubin where it's like turn on the tape. There's so much to like. He's a multi-purpose, highly athletic safety who can do it all. 239 snaps in the box, 278 snaps in the slot, 174 snaps at free safety. So used all over the place. He's got good size, moves well. I like his speed and instincts in coverage. I think his testing times don't capture how fast he is on the football field. I think he can play zone or man from the safety position, which is unusual. Where some of these guys, you put him in man, it's going to be trouble town. I think with him, he can play man. When he's picking up a receiver out of a cover two shell look, he attacks the route. He doesn't just drop into cover two shell space or cover two look and drop into a spot. He drives in on the route and looks to come up and make a play. He was the second highest rated run defender at the safety position in college football last year, which is in 13th highest rated overall. He is very strong in the run game. He pursues hard, excellent run fits, willing to take on blockers to close the hole. He gets off blocks and can still find the ball carrier, a sure wrap-up tackler who can also lay a lick. Very good at wrapping up in the open field and one-on-one opportunities with the ball carrier. That grade of him as a run defender fit to what I saw on tape. Absolutely. Absolutely it did. Only a couple of interceptions in his career, but he did display keen ball skills on those picks and did have 7 pass breakups this last year. So not completely an empty shell when it comes to also making plays on the ball, being good in coverage on top of it. So the top end speed's a concern. Sometimes his reading of the play can be a little bit off. He needs to be better about his pre-snap recognition of what's going on. To me, all correctable problems, which is why I ended up putting him into the third round, is I think that this is a skill set that will translate to the pros.
Yeah, I liked him too. I put him in my fourth round. I do wonder if he's more of a traditional strong safety, though. He's one of these players who feels like the further away they get from the line of scrimmage, the less effective they are. Kind of like what I said about Cooper DeJean. I feel like the closer they are to the line, the better they are. But when you ask them to turn their back to the line of scrimmage and start running down the field, it's not as good.
What about him in less of the cover two shell and more of the ability to put him into the box to slot? Because he has 278 slot snaps, which is almost the majority of his snaps last season out of
Yeah,
that role.
that's something you could do. He's also, I thought, pretty good at guarding tight ends in coverage. You could also use him like that. There are ways around it, but I did think that him having great distance from the line of scrimmage was an impediment to him playing effectively. It is worth noting. Yeah, what did I have? Good fierce temperament, good amount of strength, really good coming up in run support, good tackler. Should offer some help on special teams as well. I think he'll be a good special teamer at the minimum. I think he's got a couple things he's got to work on in terms of like processing as well. But I do like him enough to say 4th round grade. And again, I wonder if you could maybe work around his free safety limitations by maybe asking him to do things in coverage closer to the line of scrimmage. So I'm not against this at all. I just I don't think he can do everything the way you would like a safety to be able to do.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I think a point on it. I do. Yeah, I just think there's a way to kind of fit those snaps between with a guy like this to where, okay, is your slot 60% of the snaps you're going to be in slot. So 60% of my snaps, I potentially have him down there. And then my other majority of my 30% snaps, I put him into sort of a box safety kind of rollish thing. I could see them maybe finding a way with that, and just a very good football player to be.
All right, so we're not too far away on that, and also Oregon State's defense last year was elite, and he was probably the most important part of that defense. Was that fair?
I think you make the argument. I don't know who else would have been the guy you put ahead of it, as far as from the tape I watched, because he was all over the place.
Mm-hmm. All right, who else did you have in your 3rd round?
Last guy in my 3rd round is actually going to technically end up being a linebacker, but we didn't talk about him a linebacker, so we got to talk about him here. Right. And that's going to be James Williams out of Miami. 6'4", 231 pounds, 33 5/8 inch arms, 4'6", 159. Basically had the same testing numbers as Tyler Nubin, almost exactly.
Yeah.
I think he's the closest player that's come out of college football since Cam Chancellor to being like Cam Chancellor. He might even be a little more athletic than Cam. He might not be exactly the hitter that Cam was, but he's much like Cam downhill, and he's very quick in short spaces to where he supply, like Cam Chancellor did, where he would surprise ball carriers and guys out there in the field where they're like, oh, I've got a couple steps to prepare for this hit. And all of a sudden he's hitting them as they're in mid preparation and lighting them up. You kind of feel the same thing a little bit with James Williams. I just loved how athletic he was at being for 6'4", where it's, you worry about the flipping the hips, the turning. And I felt like he did that stuff pretty good for his size, like in an unusual kind of way in how he moved. Both really good in coverage, showed some ball skills, was able to drive on the ball. Again, really kind of weird for his size at times, the way he could kind of do some of those things. I see a guy that the NFL now sees in a way where, look, if Cam came in this league at this point now, he'd be moved to linebacker at this point too. He was in the last of the vestiges of an area where a guy at 6'4" could be considered to still kind of make it out there at strong safety. So the transition into linebacker is not the worst thing here for this guy at this point, but him to become a will linebacker next to the mic and be able to run free and be able to just utilize his athleticism, size, and hitting ability and tackling ability. I really like, he's one of my favorite players in the draft is James Williams. He's one of my guys I'd pound the table for. His effort, his hustle, his size, his length. He checks a lot of boxes for me, and a guy that I think you could put up in a variety of different areas in this defense, and he could find comfortable. Now, just because you move him to will doesn't mean you couldn't find him with some strong safety snaps mixed in there. It wouldn't mean that that's the way that that's got to fit. My cat's driving me crazy right now. Okay, kitty. Sorry about that.
They do that.
She's deciding now is the time to explore everything here. So I do like him a lot. It's going to be tough with him when you take him, and to take him in 3rd round will be tough for Hawk fans because it's a position change on a guy you're taking there. But I trust that he's going to be able to do that because he's a really good football player, smart football player, and he's got all of the size and physicality to be able to handle that change.
Yeah, I ended up in the 4th round with James Williams. I like him plenty. I agree with most of what you said. The size is remarkable. He's a great tackler, closes to the line of scrimmage to make plays against the run really well, but can't do the deep safety stuff or really any of the real safety stuff when you get down to it. His instincts probably need some work, but he's only 21. That's another thing that's important to note here. He's only 21. Those things should get better. It's just that whole thing of moving a guy to a different position. I don't know if I want to spend a third round pick on it. I think that's basically where I split there, because I agree with pretty much everything you said. I just, if I'm going to be taking a guy and saying you're going to play a position you've never played before, I don't know if I want to spend a top 100 pick on that.
It's all about upside. Where do you see his upside in going to the linebacker? To me, it's that I get you on having the worry on the change of position. It's a valid concern, but it also then, I think, in tandem with that concern has to come with, okay, but what is your projection for him as an outside linebacker? Is it hard to make that projection? It is, but that's part of the, to me, the trusting in the process and the player, and that if he's put on tape that he's that good, he's going to settle in that position. And being that he's young and has time to kind of find his way at that new position, I don't think it'll be an issue, especially when you're talking about the will versus the mic, because the will allows so much for that guy to run free. It's less about him taking on blocks at the second level. And it's more about just being rangy and being a playmaker and go find ball and hit, and that's something that I think is going to fit to his game really well. I think if Cam had been asked to make the transition to a will linebacker, I think he could have done it just fine. So I have a lot of faith they'll be able to make this change. I don't think it'll be as major a one, because he played so many different snaps across the board. It was from free safety to strong safety. He had 1/6 of his snaps were in the slot, where he was down near the line of scrimmage. So, I mean, he's played in a variety of roles in the Miami defense too. It wasn't just him kind of fitted into kind of the Cam role from yesteryear, 10 years ago. And that gives me that faith that he can capture this.
Okay. I can definitely dig it. He would be fun to have. He would be definitely fun to have.
He would. You get a lot of people dreaming about Cam again. We got a new Cam. You and I would be hearing it 24/7 on our streams.
It's Hoof. Thank you for the member message. 36 months. Thanks again for all the work you guys do for the draft. You ready for it to be over? Well, I mean, once it's over, we're not going to have a lot to talk about for a while. So not necessarily.
Yeah. You know what? The only over part of it, I'm not ready for the draft to be over. I'm really excited for the draft. Doing all this work just ends up making me more hyped for the draft than anything else. But certainly, and I'm sure Brendan will attest to this, when you get It's Hoof to that 263rd player that you've looked at on your list, you're definitely getting that point like, okay, I think I've looked at enough guys here. I can't look at any more people. But no, it's more of just hyped up now for how this will play out, and just excited for that. And as Brendan said, once you kind of get to the end of the draft and you get through all of your breakdowns of the draft, there's about a 2-month period here in this year where it'll get kind of quiet from our perspective of things. So it's I think it's quite the opposite still. We're still on that edge of super excited for it and kind of looking forward to this next couple of days. And it's intense, but it's fun.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you. It's Hoof.
Thanks, Hoof.
With Nolan, thank you for the $2. 60% of the time, it works every time.
That's right. What was the name of that? What was the name of that clone? It was
Panther something.
Panther something. Made from real bits of Panther. 60%. It works 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Nolan. And we also have a new member, Zane Gooding. Thank you for becoming a member here on the YouTube side.
What's up, Zane? How you doing, man?
All right, good to see you. And all right, so that was most of my fourth round that we just went through. I did have Tyke Smith, who I think we talked about as a corner the other day, if I recall. I did have him listed as a safety, and I did like him a pretty good amount. I put him in my fourth round. I also had, and this is a guy who I initially thought was staying back, but I recently read an article that stated that he's coming out this year in this draft. It's Bo Braid of Maryland.
Okay.
So 6 feet tall, 203 pounds, 31-inch arms, didn't test at the combine. Decent production over the last couple of years, 160 tackles, 3 picks, 11 passes defensed over the last 2 years. Did you have anything on Bo Braid?
I think if I was to put a word on Bo Braid, I'd say functional. I put him in the 5th round for me. Functional box safety who at times can give you free safety looks, but he's better down around the line of scrimmage. He's excellent at screaming off the edge in the run game, able to chop down running backs in the backfield when he's allowed to really cut it loose back there. I think his coverage skills, much like him as a player, as a functional box, is just functional. I don't think there's anything really great about what he does in coverage. He can occasionally drive on the ball. He gets a little over aggressive for me in zone coverage, but it's fine. Solid instincts, but nothing tremendous. It's like I say, just functional back there. I didn't see a lot to me that got me excited about his tape. Average size, average speed, average athleticism across the board to me. If he doesn't chop down the ball carrier, I thought that he does have a hard time tackling. His whole move is to try to take you out by the ankles and come in as a missile, and that just doesn't always work. And that's why he also has a very high missed tackle rate throughout his college career, is that it's not just the short arms, it's also that stupid, I'm going to just try to always submarine you, and that doesn't always work. He was the 444th rated safety by PFF last year, with fits to what I saw on the tape. I just thought, again, coming down to it, you're just kind of you look like a normal, average looking safety in college football to me on the tape.
Yeah, I put him in my 4th. I liked him a little bit more than that. I think his ball skills are actually pretty decent. I think he's really good in zone. I think he's really good at processing information when he's sitting back in zone. I think he's good at triggering downhill against the run. And I think he'll also be valuable on special teams. I was disappointed with his ability to cover ground. It's not as good as I thought it would be. Doesn't cover as much ground. Doesn't hit with very much force on his tackle attempts. His short arms lead to missed tackles. Gets stuck on blockers. Not really good in man. So I kind of felt like he was a good fit for McDonald's defense in that he could kind of fill both roles. But I didn't think he was very good at either of them. He was just kind of okay. So I ended up bumping him up a little bit because of that flexibility. But at the same time, it wouldn't be that fun to have because he's just not that good at either side.
That's kind of what I came to, is like, I want something to be, I want a part of your game to kind of sizzle and get you in the 4th round. I go 3rd round to go, okay, league average starting place, end of the 3rd round is about as best as I can hope. 4th, 5th, 6th round. It's all kind of a roll of the dice at that point. But what I'm looking for 4th round is a sizzle part of your game. You'll have something empty. You'll have a little negation, but give me the sizzle. 5th round is more of, I don't have sizzle, but I might have everything's okay down the line a little bit, and just where I kind of place these guys.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that was Bo Grade. Yeah. All right. A couple other donos in here. Taker 210. Thank you for the $2. Thoughts on Fatanu at 16 and Rattler at 81? I'd feel okay about both those. I'm not against either of that.
I wouldn't hate either. I wouldn't hate the move on Rattler at 81. I love Fatanu at 16, Taker. So Fatanu at 16 is great. He provides us an insurance policy and an immediate starter at the same time for the situation going on with Lucas. With Rattler at 81, I wouldn't be mad at it, but at the same point in time, you're carrying 3 quarterbacks now next year. I don't have as much faith in Rattler's upside. The 5 flat 40 that he ran, not mobile in the pocket, doesn't have a lot of size on top of that lack of mobility. That gets me very concerned with him. Though I will say it's fine if you're taking him in that spot in the draft. It's not horrible, but it does feel like there'd be some other players that'd be a little more interesting to us at 81 at that point than going with Rattler.
Yeah, I think the value's just about right there, but at the same time, I find it hard to believe that we're going to get down to pick 81 and I'm going to feel like Rattler's the BPA. I'll say that much.
That's kind of what I'm thinking too. I mean, if there's a variety of places you could kind of go. I think that'd be just more better value at that spot. You'd be kind of reaching for QB even at A1 where the value's right, but there'll be value at other places.
Mm-hmm. Concierge with Nolan. Thank you for the $5.
Sex Panther.
There we go.
That's right. Trying to come up with it, man.
How much melatonin do I have to take so I can just wake up to hear the Seahawks are on the clock? Well, you can't do that because then you're going to be really confused when you wake up and Justin Herbert's been traded to the Vikings. And,
exactly.
Brandon Ayuk is on the Chargers, and the Niners now have the 5th overall pick, and they're taking Marvin Harrison Jr. And it's like, you're going to be confused, and you're going to take so long to figure it out. By the time you figure it out, the Seahawks will have already picked. So you don't want to do that.
Yeah, you got to be following along the whole process. This is the last 24-hour period here, man. This is when the action heats up. You know, this is when the rumors abound.
Yeah. So don't do that. But we're almost there anyway. Don't worry about it too much. We're almost there.
You're close, Nolan. 20 milligrams. I'll go with that as an answer.
Oh, that's a very small amount of melatonin. If that's true, that stuff is very potent.
I don't know. I don't do melatonin. I always just fall asleep. So I pass out.
All right. So I got another guy in the 4th round here, and this is another local one. This is another one that most of my viewers will be very familiar with because we watched him all last season. Dominique Hampton of the Washington Huskies.
Oh, wow.
And I have to acknowledge the fact that this is driven in large part by his very impressive combine,
Hmm.
but can't be ignored. I think that he was probably a fifth round pick before the most recent season. I think the combine boosted him up to about the fourth round. 6'2, 215 pounds. So he's got big time size, more than I expected. 4.5, 140, 155, 10-yard split, both pretty good. Big vert, nice broad as well. 3-cone, 20-yard shuttle were both good. ESPN's actually elevated this guy to the second round. That's how big his combine was, which I don't know
Whoa.
if I'm seeing that, but I am kind of seeing the big picture here. So what did you make of Dominique Hampton?
He's obviously the size is really nice with the testing numbers. He's not a pure hitter, but he can bring some stopping power in what he does. Despite his experience, I think instincts and awareness in space and coverage remain a challenge. He's better going forward than going backwards or side to side. He's not lost when dropping his own depth, but there's something stiff and unnatural about his zone drops to me. Snap counts were evenly distributed across the board between slots, strong safety, and free safety. So he gives you some of that positional versatility that we like. That on the surface of it fits to the defense that we run. His missed tackle rate went through the roof this year, and I have some big issues with him as a tackler in space. 502nd rated safety by PFF last year, a 24-year-old rookie as well. This is not a young guy coming into the league. He gets caught too much flat-footed for my liking, combined with being a little bit tentative in coverage. I think it allows for some real easy completions into his area. He only gave up one touchdown in the year, which, does speak to his ability to stay clean over the top when they did to align him in single high. But Brendan, he gave up 516 yards in the air this year. I mean, 207 of those yards were yak alone. So the issues in tackling in the run game absolutely show up on the receivers in the backs after the catch. I think his fire as a player kind of burns at a simmer. I don't think he's the most tenacious of defenders out there. I had a real low grade on this guy. I think he's like a sixth round guy to me. I just didn't think that the testing numbers matched up to what I saw with him on the tape.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of a gamble here. I will acknowledge that. I would say this. Some of the numbers with regards to what he's given up in coverage, that's going to be inflated when you're playing on Washington and they have one of the best offenses in the league and every team's playing catch up, right?
Well, not necessarily, because there's specific reasons you give up coverage, right? You give up coverage because you're in the right place or you're not. You give up coverage because you look tentative in coverage or you're not. You give up coverage. You give up plays because you're sitting flat-footed when you should have been driving back on the route. So there's things that he does in coverage that allows for those completions to give up. And Brennan, go look through every one of the safeties in this draft. I don't think any of the one of those guys that we're looking at that are in the draftable range gave up anywhere close to 500 yards in coverage. Not one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I just think it's a little inflated because of his circumstances is what
but Evan Williams played on Oregon with the Bo Nix offense that put up a lot of yards and a lot of points on their side of it. So why doesn't he have that same equivalency to what he had happen?
Yeah. Yeah, it is a gamble. You are definitely betting on the traits over the tape. So that's why I'm not putting him in the top 100. So what did I have here? His combination of size, length, and athletic ability is very rare. He's a hard hitter. He uses his length well to break up passes. Some of the issues, shaky in man coverage, doesn't take very good angles to the ball, struggles to work his way through traffic, and he's not a great tackler yet, which is weird to say for a guy who had 110 tackles last year. But there are some things to be worked on. I think he's going to have to get coached up heavily. But if you believe in your coaching staff, I think there's a reason to believe he could become a really good player in this league. It just isn't going to happen quickly, and it certainly isn't a given.
Yeah, I think that there just comes to a point with me where you got the tools, but do you know how to use them? And some of it's got to be naturally built in that you know how to use some of them. And I don't see him seeing to know how to use them. And when you talk about cleaning it up, as we've spoken about, when you get a guy 24 years old, it's a little bit of a different territory you're in as far as thinking that this is going to get cleaned up. That's getting cleaned up. This will be fixed. You're getting more of a finished product in the player that you're getting on the field, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely see why there would be some caveat emptor stuff going on here because there is some stuff on the tape that is bad. There's no doubt about it.
Tools are there. Tools are legit. Yeah. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think that you watched that national title game early on when Blake Corum had like 200 rushing yards in the first quarter. A lot of it was because the safeties were coming up really hard, and then he would just make one cut, and there'd be nobody there. So he
Yeah.
was certainly part of that. He wasn't the only one, of course, but yeah, that was one of the big things that happened in that first quarter that I remember. But the traits are special. I think is definitely still stands.
Definitely is. It's just that those things that just combine, and then you throw in the fact that tackling rate miss went through the roof this year, which is another thing where it's like you should tackle much better than you do at your size, and I didn't like that part of it.
Brian Myers, thank you for the $9.99. Gentlemen, does the Zach Wilson trade change your first round mocks at all? Christmas and spring comes Thursday.
I think at the end of the day, I'm still putting Bo Nix to the Broncos in my final first round mock. I believe that the Zach Wilson trade gives them flexibility for draft day. Number one, if something happens with Nix to where they don't feel like they're caught in a corner, that's first off. Number two, I've thought that maybe a bit of a part of this also is that Jared Stidham is going into the final year of his 2-year deal that he signed last year, and they would save cumulatively $5 million from moving off of Jared Stidham, which is not a lot of money, Brian, but to me, if you're the Broncos and you're just Brendan, $80 million in dead money off Russell Wilson deal.
Yeah.
At $5 million kind of, $5 for one man versus to another man's a lot different, right? $5 million to a team sitting on a ton of cap space versus the Broncos who are looking down and like, man, this is going to get tough over the next couple of years. We need every bit of inch we can get. We need every last dollar that we can get. And so that's part of what I thoughts on this is that it's Zach becomes the backup to Nix basically, or they compete essentially.
Yeah, I find it very hard to believe that Zach Wilson would change anybody's plans. Like that
said nobody had any ever, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's like, there's that thing about bad teams stay bad for a reason. Like, if you actually allow that trade to change your mind about the direction of your team, then and I gotta believe Sean Payton's smarter than that. I gotta believe that Sean Payton knows better than that.
What's got me worried about this one too, Brendan, is tell me if I'm out on this one. You get Zach, you have a problem with Russell Wilson because he's all improvisational and you want your offense on script and on time if you're Sean Payton. So then you bring in Zach Wilson, who's done almost nothing good in the NFL, but the good things that he does do is when he's playing off script. Am I off? Am I missing something on that?
I don't think so. I think it was just an opportunity to get a guy who's clearly talented for basically nothing.
There you go.
I don't think they thought about it beyond that.
It's also part of what gets me hesitant that there's any kind of like, oh, let's start partially hitching our cart to this Wilson wagon, on that front.
Yeah. And I mean, there is a scenario where 5 quarterbacks go before Denver picks. That's a realistic possibility. And the one quarterback left might be somebody that they really don't want.
True.
Now, I suspect, based on what we've heard, that Peyton really likes McCarthy and he really likes Nix. I don't know what he thinks about Penix, but theoretically, Penix is the kind of quarterback he would probably be pretty enthusiastic about, right?
I would think so.
So I think he's going to feel pretty decent about his options no matter what. But maybe he doesn't like Penix. Maybe there's something there he really doesn't like, and he wants to protect himself in case that's the quarterback who's left.
To your point, if you got Penix or Nix, you have two guys that fit to what he wants on the on-script, on-time offense, right? Those guys have shown they can do that. I mean, even people have made the comp between, I think it's valid, between like a Nix and a Breeze or even a Breeze and a Michael Penix. There's some comps to be had in there. Guys that came from a spread system and played it at a high level, and that Payton looks at that and he looks at the baseline of Breeze coming from that in Purdue and then coming to New Orleans and says, okay, this will be the kind of quarterback who's going to be able to execute my system. One of the two. I'm not saying he's going to love both, like you say. He may love one and hate the other, but I could see him having one of those guys that he loves. One of those guys is like, yeah, that guy will be able to get this done.
Yeah. Like, if there's anybody in this drafted quarterback that he doesn't like, it might be somebody like, I could see him not liking Jaden Daniels, because Daniels would be so improvisational and not his kind of quarterback.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a Jaden would be a guy that he'd be like, I don't know on that guy. Maybe even a guy like Drake May be like, I don't know on him because it's not as refined yet and clear yet that he's going to be able to hit his ceiling. It's more of the risk there, more of the boom bust thing there.
Taker, thank you for the $5. Saw a mock with us trading up to 10 with the Jets to select JJ McCarthy. I did not see what the trade included. What might a move like that cost us? Well,
Everything.
I'll tell you, in recent years, trade ups that are not for super blue chippers tend to be very, very cheap compared to how they used to be. Like trading up for Caleb is going to cost you everything. Trading up for Drake May is going to cost you everything. But to 10, I don't know. I mean, the thing is, we don't have our second round pick this year, so I don't even know how we make that work without giving up a first next year, which I really don't want to do. I really don't want to give up next year's first, no matter what, unless you're getting Caleb.
You don't think the third gets it done?
No, I don't. I don't think it's enough. No.
What the Cardinals give up to go up from 12 to, what was it, 7 last year?
I think it was 12-6.
12 to 6? I mean, they didn't give up a first. I know that.
Yeah. But it wasn't a third, I don't think. I think they did give up a high second. Yeah, I don't think Schneider's interested. I don't even think JJ McCarthy is a Schneider type of quarterback. He likes more prototype quarterbacks. He doesn't want, 6'2" Brock Purdy. He wants Josh Allen. He wants Patrick Mahomes. He wants the guys who can do everything, not the guys who can only do like one thing.
Agreed. No, I would agree. The McCarthy thing, I would be a very sad guy. We've not only taken Jay McCarthy, but we've given up extra draft capital to go get him and be like, oh my God, no, please. I don't buy though that JJ lasts till 10 as it is. I mean, he's being pushed pretty hard to be up in that top 5 at this point, come one way or another. I mean, the Vikings are, they're basically just like, holding him from behind in a bear hug right now. I feel like, they're like with their head laying on his back, It seems like they are really in love with the guy. And they're buying in the process. They're ready to compete now. And then he can start in there and be that guy to help them be ready to compete right now. So I think Vikings still become that team at some point or another to take McCarthy.
Mm-hmm. Right. So I would assume we'd have to give up next year's first to move up like that.
It'll be next year's second. You're not giving up a first for 6 picks. Next year's second is the highest it costs you.
Yeah, which I still would really rather not do unless it's for a franchise quarterback. And I think all the franchise quarterbacks will be gone by the time you get to pick 10 anyway.
I agree as well. I don't want to move up in the draft in this way for that cost. And I wouldn't want to give up. I mean, they're talking about next year's draft being a very, very, the last draft that will have the COVID, basically extra people in it with the extra year of eligibility. So I don't want to be pulling back the picks already in advance on that next year, especially for a guy like JJ McCarthy for me. But luckily, thankfully, the Vikings are going to take this off the table for us, so we don't have to think about it, I think.
Seems like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. I think that was it for my 4th round. I did have Oladapo in the 3rd round, but we already talked about him. Or 4th round, yeah. So did you have anybody else in the 4th round?
I did have Evan Williams out of Oregon in the 4th round, 5'11", 200 pounds, short arms, 30 1/8 inch. Ran only a 4.6 40, but did a 1.55 10-yard split with almost a 41-inch vertical, a 10.6 broad. So the explosive numbers were really good. Definitely a guy that's modeled his game a lot after kind of a Jamal Adams type and how he moves around out there. He's got kind of young Jamal Adams kind of acceleration, that you get that 1.55, you feel that on the field. He's always bouncing around the tips of his toes, always ready to bump up to full speed or change direction. Just very reactive back there in the way you want your safeties. When you get a lot of misdirection and plays going this way and go back this way, he can really recover and get back to a spot, especially if he gets kind of overrun at first. Brings a little bit of an ability to hit, willing to put his body in the line, which I liked about him. Asked to do many different assignments in this Oregon defense, from playing up around the line of scrimmage to playing back center field, and he did them all really well, I thought. If he's going to get a negative on a play, it's usually because he can't quite get off the blocks, or, he's going to go make a play or miss a tackle when he can't get quite those small arms around the ball carrier. Those are the 2 big things to me that jumped up in his game, where he just gets blocked a little bit too much. But the acceleration is near elite. It shows up on the football field. He just gets on top of everything so fast, I feel like, and he's got the good instincts paired with it. Only gave up 218 yards in coverage last year on 37 targets, 27 receptions. The tackling can be a little off when he's coming from center field. The missed tackle rate's a little bit there. He's a little maybe more, kind of in that, you want him back in coverage more than you want him coming up. But I thought he showed comfortability in doing both, and he was even a good blitzer. Sent 20 times last year. He notched 8 pressures, 5 sacks, and a quarterback hit. Again, that's only on 20 blitzed snaps. So 5 sacks on 20 blitz snaps is a pretty good productivity level. Again, something that I saw, okay, that would fit to what we'd want on this defense too. So just loved him on his back pedal and how he played coverage and his feel and movement and coverage and getting to the right places in the right zones. And I thought he was just smartly on the details. You didn't see him making a lot of big mental errors across the field as some of these other safeties.
Yeah. I was more of a 5th round on him. There are some appealing things. He's really good when he's lined up in the box. I think that close to the line of scrimmage, his coverage is good. Like when he's covering tight ends and covering maybe slot receivers. I actually think he could be a decent nickel corner in the NFL if he was a little faster, but maybe his acceleration would allow him to get away with it. And he's got really explosive movement skills. So maybe he can find a way there. Understands how to fill lanes and run support, triggers downhill quickly when playing back, but he's just doesn't cover that much ground in coverage, a little bit passive in coverage. So I don't think he has the deep safety chops that you're looking for. And I think for the most part, he's like a really good special teamer that can play box safety stuff. And I'd be a little bit concerned about him being able to do too much else. So I went 5th round on him.
Yeah, I liked a little bit more of the ability to play the free safety stuff. I thought he showed a little bit better ability in coverage than you did on that side of it, but we're not tremendously far off either.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was Evan Williams. Did you have any other 4th rounders?
3 more I had in this 4th round. Next one would be Jalen Simpson.
Yes. I think I had him listed as a corner, so I don't have his data up. But go ahead.
We got a 6 foot 179, 445, 40, 151, 10-yard split, 40-inch vert, 11-1 broad. So exceptional testing numbers across the board. He's just a thin, long-legged safety who just doesn't have any traits that jump out other than he does bring cornerback skills to the position. And I think he's a safety that brings cornerback position skills to the position, Brendan, rather than he's a cornerback playing safety, if that makes sense. He had 4 interceptions last year, a nose for the ball. He is constantly late in the run game. That's the big place he's got to clean up. But he was one of the top cover safeties rated by PFF last year and in this draft. It's the 2 spectrums of his game, right? Where he's absolutely fantastic in coverage and can sometimes be even, god awful at times in the run game. But only allowed 15 completions for 169 yards last year. 107, and that's with 195 snaps out of the slot, Brendan. We were talking about Javon Bullard earlier, and when he got put in the slot the previous year, he gave up a lot more yards, and this guy was able to still kind of put a button on that even when you did put him in to that slot. I think he does give you some slot ability, though. Again, I think that safety is where his final resting place kind of needs to be. He is a little bit tight-hipped, so change of direction, not really going to happen. Those long legs come into play on that a bit too. The interceptions he had 4 were all legitimate except for one, which was a Hail Mary, but the other ones he was jumping routes. So the ball skills are really legitimate with him. It's just he's got to clean up the tackling. And I thought the testing numbers and coverage stuff was so good it overwhelmed me on this, Brendan, but I can't deny that the tackling stuff is it's bad.
Yeah, I had Simpson in my 4th round as well. I just had him listed as a corner. I think he'll be able to do a little bit of both. And I think that flexibility adds value. I liked most of what I saw about him. I think that when you add in the fact that he can do a little bit of both, it helps. Click and close is good. He flips his hips well. Change of direction skills are nice. He's just not a very good tackler and probably needs to get a little bit stronger. He does have the frame to add a little more weight. He's 6 feet flat, 179. But I would say even like early 4th round would be okay.
Yeah, I'd probably be more mid 4th because I'm worried the cleaning's not, or mid 4th, late 4th, just because I think the tackling is going to be continually an issue, even after he adds weight. It's that willingness thing with me I worry about with him, but you just fit him into some kind of cover role wherever you can and kind of float him around and try to protect him as you can. And he might be able to give you some great coverage and then take away the ball occasionally on top of it.
Let's see here. Coded ad. Thank you for the $10 Canadian super sticker. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Cody Dad.
Thank you for that. Who else did you have in your fourth round?
Two guys I got left is Millard Bradford. I think you said you hadn't checked that guy out.
Yeah, I do not have Millard Bradford, so take it away.
TCU safety 4.42, 155, 10-yard split at 191 pounds, 38 and a half inch vert, 10.4 broad. So all really good testing numbers across the board from the safety position on that side of it. He's a cover safety who brings quickness, speed, and explosiveness defensive coaches used to salivate over back in the day. He can man up as a true defensive back in coverage. He played mainly in the midpoint between the hash marks and TCU's defense. So kind of in that, single high safety role where you're just going to have to read the quarterback and kind of flow to the right direction. A lot of center field stuff. He stayed true, never gave up anything over the top. Was able to still play underneath coverage really effectively as well. So not just the guy that stays on top and does nothing on the underneath stuff. He was on both. He was really, I thought, pretty solid. He's got loose hips, can drive on routes. That's on top of being really explosive, fast, quick, Brendan. So he kind of provides those three elements together that I really like in his skill set, especially. Somewhat slowed reactions to play developments. He is competitive with the ball in the air. He can turn around and locate it. He's not a pass rusher, not going to use him as a blitzer, but he's got 3 years of starting experience, over 2,000 snaps in college. So he brings some wisdom to the position that you feel snap in and snap out, where he's in the right place, the right spot. Whatever this guy's going to give you, I think, Brennan, because he's played so much college football, he's going to be ready to give it to you immediately. And with his testing numbers now, that goes along with the fact that I didn't see any huge major holes in his game. There's maybe not a lot of sizzle there and excitement on the other side of it. And there are some times where he can be in the right place, the right time to make the play, but, just not quite big enough to get it done, or not enough sure enough tackler to get it done, but just enough there that I thought this guy's got a home in the NFL. I will say this, though, not necessarily a cover two shell guy to me, more of a guy like Kalen Bullock, where, you're more fitting him into that free safety role and asking him to, just more sit to that than try to do a variety of different things.
Okay. All right. Sounds not too bad to me. Fourth round value. Okay. And you had one more?
Last guy I had was Dejon Anthony. Dejon Anthony. I guess it'd be the right to pronounce it. Out of Mississippi, 6 foot, 195 pound safety. He's got 32 and a half inch arms. So good arm length compared to some of the other guys in the draft. 4.55, 151, 10-yard split. Good testing numbers, 37 inch vert. So tested well. He is twitchy, so that matches the testing numbers. The first thing I saw about him was like, man, you do got a twitchy guy with snaps all over the Ole Miss defense. He's a hitter. He's one of the guys that put those hit sticks that you've seen on Jaden Daniels that we've all seen here throughout this offseason who evaluated. He's one of those guys that put one of those great hit sticks on Jaden. I do think he's more of a slot than a safety, Brendan, but he does bring the free safety, strong safety skill set. Those snaps at depth at free safety were kind of uninspiring compared to what you get with him closer to the box, even in off coverage. His instincts are very good, especially down there in the box. But it can be more hit or miss when he has to get to depth, especially with just his he's got average awareness across the board, I think. But put him in off coverage out of the slot and let a quarterback try to sneak in a slant route or stop route in front of him and he'll jump it. He's got legit ball skills, legit reactions to those kind of routes in front of him, which is what I really liked and why I put him in my fourth round, Brendan, is I just liked his ability to make a play on the ball in coverage. 3 interceptions last year, also gave up 300 yards in coverage. So he will give up a little bit as well. Just okay as a blitzer. I haven't heard many people talking about Anthony, but I did think that another guy that's not a Fangio guy here, cover two shell guy, maybe more put him into the slot, maybe give him a couple of snaps here and there, maybe put more free safety, more in that, like we're talking about Millard, or just kind of fit him into more, not free safety, but more down strong safety, more box stuff. Maybe that's just where we'll fit him better with some slot stuff in there, kind of like Bullard, where you're more kind of getting in that realm maybe. But I liked his skill set. Late fourth round, right on the edge of the fifth round for me.
Yeah, I had him, I think, in the fifth. I liked his speed. I liked his acceleration, ball skills. He's a ball hawk, like you said. 5 interceptions over the last 2 years, 12 passes defensed. He's very aggressive at the catch point. He has good click and close when he's in zone. I do think that he takes some bad angles, and he's got a lot to work on if he wants to be able to play in the box and wants to be able to help against the run. I don't think he's a very good tackler. I don't think his run defense in general is very good, but that's something that can improve theoretically. So I put like a 5th round grade on him. He's all right.
Yeah, he's got an interesting physical profile with what he brings, because he's not coming up short in these areas like some of these other corners where it's like, well, the 40's slow or the arms are short. or he's, too light. Kind of checks at least all those boxes.
All right. So that was your 4th round, right?
That was the last of my 4th.
All right. So bumping on down to the 5th round, I've got a guy here. Josh Proctor would be one of my 5th round guys. Ohio State. Really only 1 full year of starting for that Ohio State defense. Played okay last year. 6'1.5", 199 pounds, 32-inch arms. Testing was about average overall. Maybe a little more bad than good, but about in the middle. What do you think of Josh Proctor from Ohio State as a NFL safety going forward?
He's a high cut, true cover 2 shell safety, physical down near around the box, and at his best moving downhill, down near around the line of scrimmage. Yet, weirdly, Brendan, most of his snaps came from the free safety position. So I like that part of it. He is a pure cover 2 shell guy in that way. He's got close to elite short area quickness for his position. I mean, that 154 definitely shows up from a safety spot that you don't normally get. Average speed, though, the 4.55 maybe doesn't capture quite. He's more into that 4.6, 4.65 range on the field, and how he moves from a speed standpoint. So more quicker than fast. And I think his hips and change of direction, slight negatives. Not bad, just slight negatives. He was using a variety of different coverage looks. His zone drops to short spaces, like taking away flat routes, are fast and under control, and he gets there quick and takes away those options from quarterbacks very, very quickly. Even when quarterbacks have that as their hot route read, he'll get out there and take it away. Ohio State disguised as much as they could with him, and I thought he did a good job of that. Clean, springy backpedal allows him to start near the line of scrimmage and then drop back into space in a hurry post snap. He's quick to a spot when he anticipates around the line of scrimmage, and he does arrive with violence in his heart. This is a guy that is willing to hit you. He'll light you up if you give him the chance. Now that could be also just taking on a ball carrier, Brendan, what I liked about him was his physicality against pulling offensive linemen, taking on guys that are trying, some of these linemen, all these safeties will try to just kind of avoid him and dart around him. This guy would actually 6'1" with 200 pounds. He was willing at times to kind of give him the two-handed pounce, I can get off your block. I can match you step for step on the strength side of it. I like that with him. Kind of ballsy on his part. His quickness, I think, does turn into explosiveness as a tackler and helps him in that realm of things. He arrives with a thump. You talked about the guys that can arrive and stop a guy dead in their tracks and they fall down versus falling forward. He'll hit the guy, stop them, and they stop dead. They're done. They're not going any further. It's just, for me, I think he's rarely used as a blitzer, so he doesn't bring much there. He's got hands of stone. He's not going to give you anything as far as taking away the ball goes. And I like the snaps better as a strong safety than the free safety stuff, which makes me wonder if he's going to really be able to comfortably do the free safety stuff at the next level.
Yeah, so I think he's good in run support. I like how he reacts when he's in zone, reading the play, and when he makes his break on it. He's a pretty good tackler. I like his length. He's got 32-inch arms, which is, for this area of the draft anyway, it's pretty good. Mm-hmm. Click and close is good, but he's not that fast, and he does get beat because of his poor speed. Not really going to be a great deep safety, I suspect. And he played at Ohio State for 6 years, but he only has like 1 year of significant playing time. So it took him a while. So he's intriguing, but I don't think he'll ever be any more than a backup. I don't think he'll ever be like a decent starter.
Yeah.
So I said 5th round seems about right.
I mean, he couldn't knock Ronnie Hickman off the starting spot last year, right? And right. Hickman went, in the 6th round or something?
Mm-hmm. Where'd you put Proctor, by the way?
5th round, too.
All right, so we are both in alignment there.
I saved the same outlet of him.
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's one of my 5th rounders. This next one has gotten some people's attention recently, I've noticed. This guy's got a little bit of buzz. There's no buzz around Proctor. This guy's got a little bit of a buzz going, though. Malik Mustafa of Wake Forest. Did not test. He's a smaller guy, though. He's stout, 5'10", 209 pounds, 30 and an 1/8 inch arms. Actually, he did do one testing. He did crank out 22 bench press reps. But we have to remember he has short arms, so it's easier for him to do that.
That's true.
But what do you think of Mustafa?
He's an interesting player. Athletically built, low to the ground, cover 2, and even can run some single high free safety. So he's got that positional versatility. I don't think he's a box guy at all, really, though, in my opinion. It wasn't surprising that he was going to test well. You can see the flashes of the athletic ability on tape and the explosiveness on tape. Let's start off with some of the stuff that's kind of both bad and good here. First off, the effort level is mid at best. His willingness to pursue, like it matters, I actively would call that into question. In the NC State game that I watched, he was allowing the running back to keep driving and fighting while his teammates would try to tackle him, and he just stood there and let the running back kind of present the ball to him past the goal line on one play in particular. But a couple of plays in that game that I was watching, I was like, man, you're there to come in and help right there, but you're just happy and satisfied to let your teammates do the work. In another possession of that game, a few plays later, he's again in the process of giving low effort, just kind of comes to a stop on the ball while a fumble is forced right around his feet. He decided the play was over with. He didn't reach down to grab the ball. And it's, again, one of those guys, just he's looking for the whistle to blow. I don't like seeing that in my players. That's not a good sign to me. Now, can't deny what he does in coverage. Another guy that's really good in coverage. 15 receptions, only given up on the season, 175 yards. He was the 9th best safety rated by PFF against the run last year. So they liked him a lot better than I did in the run. I just didn't think the effort was consistent, and it was a lot of times gone. And I don't think they're dinging him at times when those other guys are in there to make the tackle and he's sort of just looking. But this is going to be a rally to the ball type defense, which I don't know fits as much to this Mike McDonald defense, having a guy like that. I think he's got the ability to make the tackles. That's evident by his rating as a run defender by PFF. It's just that it's not consistently there. His path and coverage when tracking a deep ball or even intermediate thrown ball is often inefficient. This also creeps up in run defense, though not as egregiously. A wealth of makeup speed and short area quickness to make up for his poor routes. So he can kind of be one of those guys that gets it wrong, but he can still get it right because he's just so explosive and athletic, Brendan. But instincts, awareness in space, processing over the course of the play just has a latency to it, in my opinion, that I do put him in the 5th round. I can see him skyrocketing in this draft and being pushed up even in the 3rd round by some team because of the physical profile he brings. But I think you're getting a bit of fool's gold here with Malik Mustafa.
Yeah, I didn't love it either. I don't think he's a good fit for what we're trying to do here. I think he's at 5'10", playing as physically as he does. It's probably not going to result in a very long NFL career, if I had to guess. I don't think he has a lot of value on the back end as well. He's a little bit slow and a little bit late in coverage is what I wrote. I think that he's very aggressive and that smart offenses are going to be able to use that against him very easily. And he's another guy. The further away he gets from the line of scrimmage, the less effective he is. So even if you can coach up the effort stuff that you were just talking about, even if you can fix that, there's still a lot here that isn't great. Yeah.
It's definitely, there's some stuff that's nice, but the stuff that isn't great, it ended up overriding the good stuff for me. I still put him in the 5th round because you're taking the risk of the 5th round, but there is upside here. You're getting in a guy at this point, if he can kind of clean up the problems in his game. And technically speaking, he can get a bit better in coverage. I think he's athletic enough to do so. He's explosive enough to do so, but you got a long way to go with this guy, I think.
Okay. That was actually the end of my 5th round as well. So did you have anybody we didn't get to?
You'd be hating on these safeties this year, Brendan.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't get into them.
I get it. Hey, if you ain't sold, you ain't sold. Yes, I have a couple of other guys here. First guy would be Jalen Key.
Did not have him.
Alabama. Just do a quick snapshot of him. Complicated player to break down in film, flashes the skill set to play split safety stuff, 221 box snaps, 186 slot, 273 at the free safety. So split all across the board pretty evenly. He has 6'1", 208, 4'6", 159. So another guy in that Tyler Nubin, Cameron Kitchens kind of testing area. Brendan did a 10-10 broads. That part was good. The tape shows worrisome areas of his game, some correctable, some maybe not naturally missing from his game. First, the tackling. I've seen Xavier Worthy break his tackle, Brendan, not once, but twice on one given play. So tackling, not always the great with him, not always the best in tackling in space. His coverage is fine, at least in zone. Didn't get too many man coverage snaps, but in zone he was strong. He does have a bad habit of banging guys as they enter his zone, which at the NFL level, that's going to get called. You're 15 yards up the field, the guy enters your zone. You can't hammer him just without the ball even coming or there being, that's not going to fly. You get away with that in the college level maybe, but it's a little bit of a panic thing that he does in coverage that I don't like. Pre-snaps instincts are wildly off. He's constantly swiveling his head back and forth, trying to figure out what he should be looking for. Way too confused about what's going on, way too much. When he's in single eye situations, he looks uncomfortable, sometimes too deep on his drops. Not a lot of natural feel here, but these things are technically all correctable things. So he's a willing tackler. He brings a pretty good amount of ferocity to the game and how he plays, but Another guy with a lot to clean up.
Okay. Sounds good to me. I don't know why I missed out on him. If he's an Alabama player, usually those guys get pushed to the forefront of the conversation. But yeah, I did not have him.
Another guy, a little bit like the previous guy we were talking about a second ago, Proctor, was just, I don't think he played a lot at Alabama. I
Yeah.
don't know if he was
the Alabama safety that we want isn't coming out until next year.
Okay.
Okay.
The other guy I had in the 5th round, and this guy might be more of a running back to me than a safety, and that's Sion Viaki.
Yeah. I did look at him. Hold on one second. Where'd he go? Okay, there we
go. He is a 4'6", 154 guy. It's that burst and explosiveness at 39.5-inch vert, Brendan, that makes me think he's maybe going to be looked at as more of a running back. He's a rare two-way player with a legit ability as a two-way player in the NFL. We don't see many of these guys come out, Brendan. Fantastic down near the box, but because Cole Bishop was down near the box for Utah, he was more of the single high guy. They kind of had 2 box safeties, basically, Utah did, in how I look at it, because he wasn't good when he was out there in single high. Way too many missed tackles on tape, over-aggressive, doesn't wrap up, 29-inch and 1/8-inch arms. So, I mean, we're talking as T-Rex as it gets. We're maybe talking like just the hands of the T-Rex, not even the arms. You just have hands of T-Rex at this size. He does bring the boom, capable of legitimately lighting guys up. But I liked him more with the running back ability and just his ability to cut, legit burst, have him not as a starter, not as a bell cow guy, but if you're 3rd or 4th running back on your roster, a guy that just comes out there and gives you some snaps, kind of thought that might be his best kind of calling card. I just didn't think he's either a box safety or a strong safety, or either a free safety or a strong safety. He's kind of neither. He's not going to give you anything as a slot guy. I don't know where you'd play him at on defense, to be honest with you.
Yeah, he's got even shorter arms than Cole Bishop. I don't know what it is with Utah safeties and short arms, but
in the water out there, man.
It's a thing. Definitely a thing. Doesn't have the range that you want on the back end as well. He's not a very good tackler. So I did right. He might find himself kind of positionless. Maybe he'll just be a special teams gunner and that's about it. He's got the size for box work. He's 5'11", 210 pounds. I like the way he sheds blockers. I like the way he reads plays when he's protecting deep zones, but physically he just can't do it. I know that this guy did actually do some running back stuff at one point, and that may be more interesting than his safety stuff. You're right, but just looking at him through the lens of a safety, I had him in my 6th round. So
yeah, I'd probably put him in 6th round if I was talking just safety. I think it's just the coaches will get him. I think he eventually logs into running back, and then as a running back, he gives you like a guy to be 3rd or 4th running back in your roster who, legit making. I mean, he's averaged like I think 7-8 yards a run or something like that when he's running the ball. So
yeah, so yeah, I went 6th round on him. I wasn't into him at all, but again, I was looking at him as a safety, and as near as I can tell, the only value he's going to add there would be as a special teamer. He'll be good on coverage units, and that's about it.
Yeah, agreed.
All right. Anybody else?
Last free safety I had on my list for the 4th round was Andre Sam out of LSU.
Oh, I missed this one too. Dang. Okay.
5'11", 191 pounds, 4.59, 40, 1.55, 10-yard split. So these are kind of we're getting a lot of these 1.459, 1.55, 10-yard splits with about 36-inch, 35-inch vert, Brennan. Hard-hitting safety with some slot ability. He transferred from Marshall and fit right into LSU this past year, and he put a solid overall season together without displaying any real glaring issues in his game. I'm not sure he's a split safety guy, but he does show some rare willingness to come up and tackle and hit from the free safety position, which might embolden a team like Seattle a little bit more that he can do some of that stuff. His coverage is a bit more hit than miss. Good drops, good instincts, solid short area quickness. Just sometimes not always on all the finer tuned details back there with his, getting to the right spots. He can get a little bit lazy on the drops. 3 interceptions this past year, 6 in his career, got some ball skills. He will be a 26-year-old rookie, which is why, despite some of these guys I'm not liking this round, Brendan, that I'm going, okay, well, I like this guy overall. Not a lot of glaring holes in his game. And we're talking about Sion Viaki, and I'm like, well, that's a running back, or Proctor, and there's this. I like this guy because he gives you a pretty good full skill set, but he is such an older prospect. That's what dinged him down to me. But heads up, solid tackler, goes low, proper wrap up ability. Coming from center field, his angles can sometimes be off, but more often than not, it's fine. Just older player, mainly probably special teams value will offer, but with some potential there. And then again, I didn't see some huge monstrous glaring hole in his game. And a coach might think, hey, we can transition that into some split safety stuff.
Okay. Not too bad. Fifth
Yeah.
round sounds about right based on your description. And that was it for your fifth?
I got one other guy here in my fifth round.
Okay, cool.
I think here. We've got Trey Taylor out of Air Force.
I had him on my list, but he didn't make my ultimate cut. I remember having him listed for a little bit there.
Now, not a lot of film to be had on Trey Taylor, admittedly speaking. But in a draft where you want a guy used all across the board, he was used all across the board, 4.53, 37.5-inch vert. So Air Force on the surface of it, Brendan, is, they haven't cranked out a lot of NFL players, but this is a guy that was the Swiss Army knife for that defense. He showed ball skills. He showed a good ability to tackle. Pretty ferocious as a player and his willingness to get after it. I felt like you could feel his energy. I didn't have a lot of tape to go off of because Air Force is kind of restricted on the amount of stuff that you can find out there from them. But hell, Seattle one time did have an Air Force guy on the roster who was a good player for us by the name of Bryce Fisher. So maybe we go back down that line once again. But I did put him in the fifth round because I thought he had a pretty complete skill set overall. Tackling can sometimes be a little bit of an issue, but he was comfortable in every role they put him in. And level of competition is a big part of it with him. Of course, going with the Air Force, you don't get the toughest of the tough. But I liked his game.
All right. That was probably why I ended up not having him on my list. It would have been hard to look at him because of lack of tape.
Not much out there, that's for sure. I found just a couple games.
All right. Very nice. All right, so that just leaves us with now the sixth round range. And my sixth round, this is the guy who doesn't believe in outer space. This is the other Texas Tech safety, Tyler Owens. And we know him because of that reason. He kind of stole headlines because he announced that belief. He also had one of the greatest jumping performances in combine history. 41-inch vert, which is 95th percentile, 12-foot 2-inch broad, which is, I think, the best broad that any safety's ever had in the history of the combine. So there are some interesting athletic traits there. Now, despite that, he never really was a high-profile player at Texas Tech. He never really did all that much. So this is basically how he got attention. So I guess him saying what he said worked, right?
I suppose so. I suppose so. I rarely do this with you, Brendan, but this is the only prospect in this draft that this did this on. So Tyler's an unusual one.
Okay.
But I literally was 2 plays into watching Tyler play, and I sent you a link in the private chat. I'll put it up to you guys. I'll put it in the chat here too as well, so everybody can kind of see this in the comment section on the live chat. So I'll leave the link. This is a link to a Texas Tech game, and you can only have to go 10 seconds into this tape and watch what he does from center field to come down in a tackle attempt on this ball carrier. And what you're going to see is such a stunning, absolutely stunning lack of effort on a play that is his responsibility, that not only does he miss, but he causes the play to get housed. It becomes an 80-yard run basically on the play because he decides to come up and provide no effort whatsoever. And when I watched that game and I watched any of the other tape on him, it just kept showing up over and over again. I don't think that this guy wants to play football. And I wouldn't say this about many college football players, but this guy does not strike me as a guy that loves the sport, wants to get after it. 766th graded safety out of 800 safeties by college football and PFF last year. And the tape shows this with that lack of effort. But if you go and watch that play, did you see it, Brendan?
No, I have not seen this play yet. I'll check it out later.
You watch this play. It's 10 seconds in, folks. And you watch what he does coming down from center field with a direct angle. The running back doesn't make a move on him, doesn't stutter step him, doesn't spin. He's just running in a straight line, and this guy just runs right past him. And it's a complete lack of effort play, in my opinion, that showed up all over the tape. And I think I wouldn't want any part of him on my team.
Yeah. So he's got size, he's got explosiveness, he's fast. He's got good length, he's got long arms. He's physically, he's got a lot of the things you want. It's just too bad he just didn't play that much at Texas Tech, which is really sad. You're playing at a school like Texas Tech, which is not exactly Alabama. You've got all these physical traits, and they don't even really want to play you that much.
I think they only put him out there because of those physical traits. I think that they were holding out the last thing. They had no other option but to probably put him out. They probably had some guy behind him that was running like a 4.75 or something. They're like, all right, here we go.
Yeah. Doesn't have good instincts. He doesn't understand coverage, doesn't really understand run fits, a lot of mental mistakes on the field. So He's one of those guys that you kind of take as a lottery ticket, but I got to tell you, I think that there's a lot of reason to believe he's just not going to figure it out. Like, like a guy like Reek Woolen, he was kind of a lottery ticket. Is he going to figure it out?
Yeah.
But that felt a lot more realistic than this guy figuring it out. So
Yeah,
my sixth
with
round.
Reek, I think he was trying with Reek. Just he had to just learn the new position and understand what he was doing. And receiver trying to learn how to tackle, you give that guy some room there. But with Tyler, it's just I it really didn't feel like his spirit was in there. And I will never usually say about a football player. I'm not a guy to question heart or whether a guy wants to be there. But this guy, it was just I couldn't kind of deny turning on the tape like, boy, this is bad. This is really bad.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would still say sixth round. He'd be a fun sideshow if nothing else, but I don't really want him. Even then, it would just be like, what's with the distraction? Like
Yeah.
he's going to be adding an element of distraction to your team that is not going to be outweighed by his production. It's like back in the day having Tim Tebow on your team. It was going to bring this big media circus that was not going to justify his minor value as like a trick play fullback.
Right. This is a toolsy project guy.
Right. So yeah, that was actually I think my only sixth round guy. I have a slew of other seventh rounders now.
I just have a couple seventh rounders left at this point.
Yeah, I had Jalen Carleys or Carlisles or Carly Lies. I don't know. From Missouri. He's another one of these bigger safeties, really long arms, 34 and a quarter. Had an okay testing, 4.5 40, 1.54, 10-yard split. Did you have a chance with Carly's?
Yeah, I think that he's facing the same thing that James Williams is, where he's going to have to transition to linebacker at the next level. Legit ball skills, man. 9 interceptions the past 3 years. In the South Carolina game I watched, he outjumped the receiver. And the receiver also was jumping high. Like the receiver wasn't like surprised he was out jumping him, but you literally felt this play where he's out jumping the receiver and then he's using these 34.5-inch arms to go up there and out extend. And then he high pointed the ball and then returned it back for a pick six. So he's got some impressive plays on his tape that show out. There's a little bit of a slowness of reaction to what's happening in front of him. Part of why I have a hesitancy to believe that he's going to be able to play safety to the next level. When he's in center field high, he stays up over the top and lets everything happen underneath him, Brendan, right? A guy that isn't trusting the speed we're just doing that. I'm going to stay high. I'm going to stay over the top. I'm going to stay protecting everything over the top, but then you leave everything underneath you. Which again, I just don't think he's going to work with the free safety long-term. Poor pursuit and tackling angles taken in the run game. When he's coming from far out, got to get him near the line. This will be helped to mitigate, I think, once you move him to linebacker and it's less of him having to cover as much space to get to the ball carrier. Plenty of yards given up in coverage last year to go along with being credited for 5 touchdowns allowed. So he gave up his share out there in that. Stop and start flipping his hips are issues. No shocker with that though. Brendan at 6'3", 227, you'd kind of expect that. Though Williams didn't have as much of that problem. I think he's playing out of position. I think a lot of the issues stem from him playing out of position. Ask him to cover less in deep space and more in short space up close. Allow him to just, go get after it as far as the ball carries with his size and his length and take on blockers like he's willing to at times. He'll be fine, I think, in that role, potentially. But it's a little bit like with James. It's going to be a bit of a risk, and you're asking him to make that change.
Right. Yeah, I have him moving to linebacker as well. Poor change of direction skills, deep zone, forget about it. He's not going to be able to do deep zone stuff. Not a very good understanding of angles either. But I do like the way he moves through traffic. I do think his ball skills are pretty decent. And I think he'll be good as I think he'll be worth a 7th round pick as like a linebacker. But again, when you're changing positions, I don't want to invest too much in you because it's just such who the heck knows.
I get it. With this one, I may be a little more risky. And I do think he can make the change. I do. I really felt like in my final notes, just saying, I think his issues really stem from that. From just being out of position and 420 rated safety by PFF. He need to be more of a linebacker. He was kind of doing what was needed for the team. It's like those Brendan, those to this one felt just like those big edges that are 295 pounds that are in college playing off the edge that need to be 3 techs. Feel like the same thing here.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Mullen, thank you for the $1.99. Current player most likely to be traded draft day. I guess Brandon Ayuk would probably have to be at the head of that list.
What do you mean, current Seahawks player or just current
Oh,
player?
well, okay. If he means current Seahawk player, I don't. I would still go Woolen. I'd still say Woolen.
I think I would probably be driven to say Woolen as well at this point. Woolen or probably Draymond Jones. One of those two is a possibility, I suppose. But Woolen would be the one that would stand out. I can't think of anybody else that would really be in play here.
Nobody's going to trade for Darrell Taylor at this point, so I'm not going to say him. But I could see that if there was a taker, just to get the money off the books.
Yeah, if there was a taker, they would do it all day. If they get a 6th rounder, I think for him, they'd probably jump at this point on that. So, but I don't think there'll be a taker
there. Yeah, and yeah, if you're talking about NFL wide, it seems like Ayuk is going to get traded, which I don't understand why they're doing it, but it seems like there's something in the works.
Well, he's probably wanting to be paid $30 million a year, and I mean that's the problem with these receiver salaries. They keep going up, and $25 million a couple of years ago for AJ Brown's not going to be the current cost for a Brandon Ayuk. So it's at the very least 28.
I mean, my thing is, this team was like one play away from winning the Super Bowl last year. Just run it back. Like, if they trade Ayuk and don't get an equivalent player back in the trade in the short term, and it causes this era to peter out and they never get back, like the fan base is never going to forgive that. Like, that is just the ultimate in like an ownership group in front office saying screw you to the fan base. Like, you were one play away from winning the Super Bowl. Why are you trying to make yourself weaker when you don't have to? I understand that it would be uncomfortable to give Ayuk what he wants, but I don't know why you wouldn't just try to run this back.
I would pay Ayuk, and I would trade Debo if it has to come down to it myself.
Oh yeah, I think that's an easy choice. Debo's not going to last long.
Yeah, I mean, I would, even if it means you're not getting maximum return for Debo, it's more about salary balancing and cap balancing than anything else. So I agree. I don't think I would go down this route either. I think that they're probably getting caught up, Brendan, in these receivers in this draft. So you move Ayuk, you're going to get probably a mid to 20th first round pick. You're able to go get Brian Thomas. And so they go, well, Brian Thomas can be, but I agree with you. I don't think that that's necessarily the route towards them finding some equivalent success versus the sort of secret sauce they have in place with all these players as it kind of currently goes. But Debo to me has been a guy, can't stay healthy, not likely to be getting healthy in the future. And I would bail on that if I could get any value for that right now as it currently stands as an Niner. And they probably have to eat some dead money to do that with him because he just signed that contract, but he's not trending in the right direction for them into the future.
That's right. So yeah, that's what I would go with.
Okay. And somebody's asking about DK trades, Zorn. I think the $23 million dead money hit you have to eat for DK just takes it off the board this year.
Yeah.
Even if the team wanted to do it.
I talk about this all the time. Trading DK doesn't save any money. It saves like 1.5 million. It's not significant.
Yeah. But the dead money's insane. And
yeah,
you're not getting back the return of value for that.
Yeah, the what it would take for a team, I think that in order to give up DK, you would need to get like the equivalent of 2 first-round picks back to make it worth that dead cap hit, and nobody's going to do that. I don't believe that anyway.
Yeah, I agree. Nobody's going to give you that value back, so it becomes about offloading DK just for craps and giggles. I don't want to just give DK away just for the sake of giving DK away. In fact, I want to keep DK. So yeah, I think if you're moving a player like that, one of your best players, one of your most productive players, you better damn well be getting maximum returns back in value. And if you're not, then you don't make that trade.
Mm-hmm. All right. Just a few more safeties to get through here. Again, we're down in kind of my 7th round area. My next guy is Kenny Logan Jr. of Kansas, the Jayhawks. 5'10", 213. Only testing he did was a 4.6 40, so not particularly fast. A lot of production over the last 2 years at Kansas, though. Over 200 tackles, 8.5 for loss, 3 picks, 11 passes defensed. So did you think anything of Kenny Logan?
Yeah, I didn't. I definitely have him as one of my lower dip guys. He's a 7th round guy for me for sure. Single high safety that was used in more of a mixed role in college, having his snaps between free and strong safety kind of split in his final season. Whereas I think before he was more in that single high free safety role. Also was asked to do some stuff out of the slot this year. So again, another guy like all these safeties, it seems like in this draft, Brendan, have just that flexibility that they do bring. He has a habit of being a bit late at the snap and then also getting taken in the wrong direction, which is kind of a bad 1-2 punch for me. You're sort of you're late coming out of your stance, and then you're going to take the wrong step in the wrong direction on top of being 4.69 as your 40 with a 1.7 10-yard split, which that is molasses, Brendan. You know what I mean? Like that's the tundra on the Packers field moves with more speed than that. So I'm really worried as far as the slowness goes. The thing I got to give him credit for, wasn't targeted very often last year, but when he was targeted, he gave up 80% completion rate when targeted. So he's really good about getting to a spot and taking away the quarterback's read. You see that where the quarterbacks will look like a couple of these other safeties. Oh, okay, no, I can't go there. Go. So he dissuades a lot of throws naturally by being smart in coverage and his placement and where he needs to be. But when you do throw into a space, not a lot of ball skills. He does allow a decent number of completions that when he is targeted, which I didn't know what to make much of that, Brendan. I come down the bottom line, though, just too slow to see him as a starter in this league or any starting potential at that point. And you feel that slowness on the speed, both physically and in his reaction times.
Yeah. The speed is a big problem. He goes for the big hit sometimes and doesn't tackle well because of it. Like he's trying to hit stick. And if you played Madden back in the old days, you know that when you go for a hit stick, sometimes you just bounce right off the guy for no reason.
Yeah.
And it happens in real life too. He draws some flags. But I do like I do like how he flips his hips. I think it's pretty fluid. He's got pretty good coverage instincts. But I just don't think what he does is going to translate that well. He is playing for a little bit of a weaker football school, Kansas. They're not, that's not a football school. That's a basketball school. So a little easier to make that football team. So I think some of the things he was showing he could do in Kansas will not translate.
Yeah, I agree. I just can't think of a safety at 4.7 in this league making it go as a starter. Especially at 5'10", 213. You better be 4.7. You better be like 6'5" and 50 or something.
All right. One more guy in my 7th round area. This is okay, where'd he go? Damani Richardson of Texas A&M. Damani Richardson. Pretty decent size, 32-inch arms, but ran a 4.6 40, 1.54 10-yard splits okay, but no explosiveness. He could not jump at all. 31-inch vert. He was a team leader for the Aggie defense. Put up decent numbers the last couple years, but I'm not too optimistic about his transition to the NFL. How about you?
Yeah, he's kind of a guy on the surface of it. It might look like one of these other safeties really well suited for the split safety look. I do think, though, at the end of the day, he's more comfortable down in the box. He can come downhill with force. He can lay a hit. He feels sudden on his arrival to the ball carrier, helping him to bring down the ball carrier just in his tracks where he finds him. Much of his coverage issues, I believe, come from being uncomfortable in the deeper zones as a free safety when he was asked to do that last year. That's why I say on the surface it looks like he'd fit, but he just isn't comfortable back there. He knows he doesn't have the speed to make it happen. He's got stiff hips, not a stop and start guy. Change of direction could be a challenge. You mentioned he has been a 5-year starter there and a team captain, so he has a rich amount of playing experience, and he is, as you said as well, a leader. He can cover tight ends and running backs well. This is that whole down this box kind of thing that I think that he brings. But slot receivers are going to absolutely smoke him when he gets lined up with them. So there's a very clear demarcation line of what he can handle in coverage and what he can't handle in coverage. Good blitzer. Only 7 pass breakups in 5 years of college football. No interceptions, Brendan. So he's giving you nothing as far as taking away the ball. In short areas, he's straight line explosive. Any other type of movement is below average. So 7th round guy, special teams dude, not going to give you much upside beyond that.
Yeah, that's what I had. Special teams as well. No change of direction skills.
None.
Are bad. Misses a lot of tackles. Doesn't take good angles. So I think that he'll be a really good special teamer, and that's about it. So 7th round pick for me. That's about it.
Yeah, it's just not a lot to say with him, unfortunately. And for a guy that's played so much football, you would expect a little more refined edges around on that one.
Yeah, and that was everybody that I put a draftable grade on at all. Did you have anybody else you wanted to toss out there?
Those are all my guys as well, man. We covered them all.
Yeah, I did look at Michael Dowell of Miami of Ohio because he was in for a top 30 visit. But there's not a lot to go on here. He's literally not on any big board that I use. and I use big boards that go down to like 1,000 players, so that's not great.
That's where that's where those top 30 visits too come in, Brent. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's also where those top 30 visits come into. They've said, we also bring in guys that we anticipate aren't going to be drafted
right
to try to sell them in on the program. And that's probably what they're doing there with that one.
Yeah, he was used as a nickel corner and a safety at Miami of Ohio. He's got NFL caliber size. I like how he comes hard downhill to defend against the run, but he doesn't really have good change of direction skills, so I don't know if he'll be able to do the nickel corner stuff in the NFL. And his short area quickness leads to a lot of missed tackles because he doesn't have the ability to keep up with a guy in the open field. But yeah, UDFA, there's really not much to say here. That's really all I could find of any interest with him. And Miami of Ohio, not exactly getting their games on television that much. So
not a lot of tape on those guys, that's for sure. It's a little limited.
Mm-hmm. All right. That's all I got.
That's all we got, man. It's been fun, man. We got through all of them. I think we're almost got up to near 300 guys here in just about total between the two lists. So
my big board had like 286 or something.
I think mine's somewhere in that neighborhood. I'm about right around the same spot. So that's about the spot. 300 is about the names. I don't want 350, 360. You look at these seven, there's so few of them that don't take off. You know, it's not really worth going in 70, 80 deep to try to figure out those guys, but good feel for the top of the guys in this draft, Brendan. It's been said that this is a draft that's maybe feels a little bit weaker at the end of things. I think that's probably true. A lot of these guys in this 5th, 6th, 7th round feel like they have less of an ability to have starting upside and more of that. We kept coming back to special teams depth. And that's fine. But that is a little bit of, I think, indicative of this draft being a bit top heavy in the top 4 rounds and then very, very much loses its strength after that point. Is that fair for your standpoint too?
Yeah, I'm not into this safety class at all. But that doesn't mean everybody in it is bad. In fact, there are definitely somebody in here is going to be good. And I suspect that we will likely end up with one safety in this draft. I think that's a reasonable bet.
I agree. I think it's very likely at some point. We've got the guys in right now that are on 1-year deals. Julian Love, 1-year deal. The Kayvon Wallace, 1-year deal. So you don't know what you got with Jarek Reed coming back. You don't know what they're going to do with Kobe Bryant. And so, yeah, this absolutely, I think safety is in play in this draft somewhere.
Radu Turkan, thank you for the $4.99. What is your guys' least desired position in the first round? Someone y'all would not want. Well, I generally do what I can to avoid thinking about things along this line. I think the only position that the Seahawks cannot make work for a pick would be left tackle. I don't think there's any way you could justify, even like if somehow Joe Alt was there at 16. I want to take Joe Alt because he's really good. But then it's like, okay, what do we do with him? I don't know. Can he play right tackle? I don't know. Can he play guard? Probably not. He's 6'9". Like that's the only position that I kind of have to put the caution tape on.
Yeah, I think I would echo your angle on this, Radu. I'll give you one extra one too, Radu, but certainly left tackle is one that just doesn't make sense, especially the pure left tackles like Alt is. He can't play right tackle, so you're just doubling up on a position that you can't have both guys playing at the same time. So even right tackle, you can have guys like Fuwongo who can maybe play some guard. Maybe a guy like JC Latham can maybe slide and play some guard if you want. So there's a little bit more of a flexibility to those guys, I would say. So left tackle would be the clear one that I would say not. Obviously, running back goes without saying. Let me give one too that is one that we're getting a lot of close connection with Byron Murphy. And if the team does get so hot to trot to take that guy or Zerzan Newton, I get and understand where they're coming from to a degree, but at the same point in time, I go, hey, you just paid $18.5 million per year for Draymond Jones last year. You're now paying, and you gave up a 2nd round pick on top of paying Leonard Williams $23 million, whatever we paid him on that. Now you're going to go back in the 1st round and take another 3-tech. Like you can only have one of these guys on the field at any one given time, and maybe be as much about their want to get out from under the Draymond Jones deal sooner than later. But that would be one to me that I'd be not desirous of us going down that road on in the 1st round.
Okay. Yeah, but my approach to this draft has always been the Seahawks need good players. They need the best players possible. And I'm not going to really worry about too much exactly what position they play and exactly where they fit in if I think that a little bit of creativity will find a way to make it work. Like, yeah, I know a lot of people are very resistant to the idea of drafting a cornerback in the first round. If the cornerback's good, I'm for it. Even a receiver. Like, yeah, I don't know exactly how they would make it work. I don't. But I don't believe that this team is so loaded with their roster that we're one player away and we have to make sure we get that one player to make this team go to the Super Bowl. I don't think that.
No, it comes back down to that thing that we talk about time and time again is the guiding North Star for the Seattle Seahawks draft. And for us in the way that we want to see them driven, and that is who is the highest valued guy you have on your board. Though I don't want Byron Murphy or Zerzan Newton, if the Seattle Seahawks with their scouts and their evaluation process and this year-long process to get here have come to the conclusion that those guys are that good to go and be picked there, I'll understand, and I'm not going to completely dump on that pick. You trust their evaluation, and it's a new defense, it's a new offense. You're going to have to change things through, and what you think is tried and true and set at one given position may not be set because Grubb or McDonald may not look at those guys as fits for what they want to do on either side of the ball. And that's the part where we have to be patient as Hawks fans and understanding that coaches have their different type of players they're looking for to make their scheme work. And there's going to be that transition process to a new that requires a turnover that you don't always expect, which is part of the fun of this draft is it's so unpredictable, Brendan.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see here. Roxanne Roll, thank you for the member message. Thank you, BNB. These position shows are immensely informative. Keep bringing it. Go Hawks. Well, we can't keep bringing it because we did them all. But
yeah. We'll keep it going though.
Year.
Well, yeah. I mean, me and Brendan both love doing this. I'm sure we'll do this again next year, and we'll try to continue to even round out the process and keep it as fun as we can for you guys on this. But we love doing this, and it helps to educate you, looking at these players not just for the draft, but then once the players get to the NFL level and we start turning it over, it's been helpful for me and Brendan when we talk about guys that we scouted 2 years ago. That okay, this guy's coming up in a free agency, or this guy's coming up in a trade. Well, what was our value? Where we're at? Everything helps to inform you down the line too, on top of just in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Unless you want to do a show tomorrow where we look at the kickers and punters. We
did miss those, Roxanne. We didn't get to those. So
I was thinking about this. Most years there's at least one kicker or punter that it's high profile that people are like, ooh, that's a guy. That's a thing. That's a guy that's gonna get drafted. He's gonna be really good. Like last year it was Jake Moody. This year there's really nobody like that. It feels like I don't know if any kickers or punters get drafted at all.
I haven't heard either. I thought there was maybe an Australian punter, but I can't remember. I thought there was maybe because it was the Dixon thing that was connecting my line, that maybe there's another one that came out, but not hearing anybody that we're seeing, we're not getting Niners taking a kicker in the third round. I don't think this team this year,
Right. Radu, thank you for the $4.99 again. How much can we see Mike Morris playing this year also due to McDonald's influence? I mean, we have a lot of money invested in the two starters at that position, but I'm sure Morris will play some.
We also don't know what the intention is going to be with Morris, Radu. The key here with Mike Morris is when he was Michigan and in the Mike McDonald defense, he was playing specifically the power edge role. So he was that big edge. He was the Jadeveon Clowney of the Michigan Wolverines defense, essentially in that role that he fit to. So does McDonald look at him and say, no, you're a 3 tech at the NFL level, or say, no, hey, you did so great in that power edge role for us in Michigan. I'm going to move you back there. We've got 2 3 techs right now. We're set at 3 tech. I'm going to get you out there. I need my power edge on early downs. So I'm going to put you back out there. And that may be the way that he goes with it, Radu. So it's hard to break down that one with McDonald because he hasn't shown his hand on Morris on what he tends to do. I do think he has an a role in mind with Morris, though. I don't think that Morris is some guy that he looks at as just some the wash guy on the roster, back end guy on the roster who may or may not make it as we go in the next year. I think that they like his upside, and I think McDonald will like his upside in whatever role he fits into.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about Morris's future in this league.
Yeah, me too. Me too as well. Wherever they fit him at.
All right. So next time we meet, we'll know what happened in the first round. Going to do it Thursday night after our draft coverage. I usually go until the end of the first round. I know you usually go a little bit later than that, especially if the Seahawks do something and there's something to talk about. But that evening, it's going to be pretty late. I think we're going to sync up and talk at least a little bit about what happened. So
100%. No, we will for sure. We'll be doing a show after each 3 days of the draft. Like I said, we'll maybe do a little bit after, I'll probably go a little bit after the end of the draft to kind of finish up comments, but we'll still be doing the wrap up for what our Hawks did on the days on all 3 days.
All right. So it's almost here, guys. It's almost here. Got a couple days away, and it's going to be illuminating. It's going to be interesting. I'm ready for it. I think you guys are ready for it too. We did all the homework. So if we don't pass the test, I guess that means we're just not very smart or something. I don't know.
That's right.
But like
the IQ is just not there then if we don't.
Yeah. we're in the wrong field. We need to change our major. We need to
well, go cover baseball, simple it down a little bit.
Yeah. So thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you, Brandon, for doing this with me. See you in a couple days.
Hell yeah. And, I'm looking forward to it, man.
On a day like today, on a week like this particular week, you just got to remember that the team needs your support because they need to make the right decision here. They need to do the right stuff here. And if they do, there's the promise of better things for this team in the near future. So we're going to say it. We're going to get out of here, and then we're going to get ready for the actual draft. So,
folks, too. 2 best drafts maybe in Seahawks history the last 2 years on the back of this value-based approach. So as though we don't sit on the same draft capital that we've had in recent years, doesn't mean that we can't still take the same approach and find a real fantastic draft. So thinking the upside to Brendan's point, thinking the positive to this, and that the Seahawks team can come through with this 3rd straight year on the back of a great drafting approach to bring a great haul in once again and just take this team back to contending status that much faster.
Yeah. And if they can pull it off again, they've got a great foundation. They've got a great foundation to build on. And that's so hard to do. That's the hard part. It really is. So
exactly.
One last time before the draft, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.